authentique et chaleureuse, naturelle et sauvage, créative, riche d'une culture millénaire. Ce pays, c'est le Sud.
La Méditerranée est mon jardin, la Provence de mon enfance. Une terre où l'on joue, où l'on rit, où l'on danse. C'est ici, c'est dans le Sud.
C'est ici que je suis né, sur le toit du monde, dans ce paysage d'exception. Derrière chaque médaille d'or, il y a les Alpes pour écrin. C'est ici, c'est dans le Sud.
Atypique et cinglante, méditerranéenne et créative, ma cuisine se nourrit du contraste entre exotisme et tradition. Cette étoile, c'est le Sud.
Plonger en apnée, c'est respecter les fonds marins, c'est jouir de la liberté qu'offre la mer.
C'est éveiller les consciences pour que sa biodiversité soit préservée.
La Méditerranée, c'est un monde de silence et de beauté. C'est ici.
C'est dans le Sud.
L'architecture doit être l'emportée de la poésie, le combat nécessaire. On appartient à la lumière. Elle ne nous éclaire pas, on lui appartient. Une nécessité première, refuser l'exil de la beauté.
Le Sud, il est là.
Le tableau que nous offre la nature nous invite à éveiller notre créativité. Nous sommes 800 000 jeunes, prêts à relever tous les défis, ici et maintenant. C'est mon Sud.
La vie est une comédie, une illusion. Avant d'être comédien, j'étais garçon de café, battleur, et je n'oublie rien. Surtout pas d'où je viens. Du Sud, putain.
Mesdames et messieurs,
Ladies and gentlemen,
merci beaucoup. Bonjour à vous toutes et à tous.
thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Mediterranean of the Future, Act 2. And with no further delay, I will call Renaud Muselier, President of the region Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur and European Member of Parliament. Good morning to all. Thank you for being here. President of Albania, General Secretary of the Union for the Mediterranean, ladies and gentlemen, the ministers, President of the Anna Lindh Foundation, ladies and gentlemen, the governors, ladies and gentlemen, the representatives of the World Bank, ladies and gentlemen, the members of Parliament of the Mediterranean Basin, ladies and gentlemen, welcome, and welcome to all of the young people who are here. Welcome to the Villa Méditerranée. I'm delighted to see that there are so many people present for this second act of the Mediterranean of the Future. We have made the right choice, I believe, and the fact that there are so many of you here confirms this. Our mobilization obliges all of the decision makers who are here, and you are the soul of the Mediterranean. We all hold this DNA. You are here because the challenges of this basin of life and history and civilization we are all each on both shores of the Mediterranean. This brings us together, and this is why we launched the Mediterranean of the Future 1 year ago here in Marseille, with the agreement and under the authority of Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian, Minister of France for Foreign Affairs in Europe, who will be joining us this evening to conclude our work. You all have here an ambition that we share. The Mediterranean is not just a geographical space; it is a space of life and a cultural cradle of prime nature. So, in Lebanon, Sardinia, the city, Greek cities, and Turkey. It dates back many, many centuries, and the Mare Nostrum has never ceased to weigh upon our history. Dear friends, we're the inheritors of a heritage that dates back 1,000 years, and this essential heritage has constantly survived the crisis. This raises a double responsibility for all of us. We must preserve and promote this heritage, of course, but we must also bring concrete, visible, tangible results. Let's place the Mediterranean of the Future in perspective. Why are we here together today? not just because we're pleased to meet each other again, but we must at all costs avoid the in-between and give the feeling that we're closing ourselves into a room for 24 hours to talk without actually achieving any results. Here we want to do quite the contrary, with new ideas, with transpositions and projects, with the synthesis of all of the actions of all of those who work within the Mediterranean basin. And it's therefore logical to dedicate our second edition to youth and innovation. Youth is at once the opportunity of the future of the Mediterranean basin. The youth will make or unmake the works of the past. Youth will conserve peace, and they play a decisive role. They are the future. They will guarantee continuity and transmission. Today, it is the 13th of November. 3 years ago, there were the terrorist attacks in Paris that moved the entire world. Before continuing, I would like to have a thought for all of the victims of terrorism throughout the world. Here in Marseille, we lost 8 lives when 3 buildings fell down last week. And this resonates with all of the terrible events that occur in our country, in our countries. And I would therefore like to ask you for 2 minutes of silence in respect of those who have deceased.
Je vous remercie. Le souvenir des disparus doit nous donner la force.
The memory of those who have passed away must give us the strength to pursue our efforts in the Mediterranean. This morning, we will pay homage to one of those, my friend Antoine Sver. He was a very exceptional mind who shed light in a tumultuous Mediterranean. Antoine was a defensor of transmission, and it was what drove his life. And this transmission he dedicated to the youth of the Mediterranean and well beyond. 1 year ago, we launched the Mediterranean of the Future under his intellectual authority. As he was accustomed to say, it was time for Europe to understand that the Mediterranean is not just the cradle of its history and civilization, but also holds the future, its future. And so he dedicated the first year of work to the environment. And there was the awareness raising steered by France, following by the COP21, in the wake of the COP21 approved by the entire world. In 1 year, we launched common projects along the entire Mediterranean face, in Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, Palestinian territories, Lebanon, Spain, Jordan, Italy, and it's just a beginning. We have set up a real roadmap of the Mediterranean regions, and this is why today we launch the challenge Zero Plastics in the Mediterranean. It's one of the main measures of the climate plan launched by the region Sud Provence-Alpes-Côte 1 year ago. Within the regional strategy ahead of the climate conference, we dedicate a large share of our budget to the combat against climate change. And this is a strong political will we've launched here in Marseille. In all of our countries, we must rise and meet the same challenges linked to the climate. This challenge will allow us to finance startups, research projects, and even experiments among citizens to fight against the plague of plastic. In the spring, there will be some winners awarded with a prize, and each will benefit from support by experts within our territories. The Mediterranean of the future is a work that must constantly be placed into perspective. It's a long work endeavor by the local authorities that must be pursued over the years and along the editions. Again, we have to place things in perspective. Mediterranean citizens, why are we deploying these efforts together? Or rather, for whom? The Mediterranean is a common asset that is the most precious. It is the sea in which some people bathe whilst others drown. We are designing the future of the Mediterranean for our youth, young men and women. You will be comforting us with new ideas, I hope, and alternative projects, I hope, and innovative options which are necessary. Your anxieties, your dreams, your hopes, we must here implement efficient and intelligent responses. We must blow a living force into our operations. That is the spirit of the Mediterranean of the future, with a robust will, which is to is to hand down the Mediterranean to the young populations. So we celebrated last weekend the armistice of the First World War. There were 80 heads of state that came together in Paris. It's easier to wage war than to make peace. And this is why the foundations of the European construction are a dream of peace and education in democracy. All of the Mediterranean shares this. Certain of you in your respective countries have been subject to the main shocks of the last year. I'm part of the first generations that has not known war, and I, above all, do not want to be the last generation to have known this. This continent, the Mediterranean, all means must be dedicated to this end. Across the Mediterranean, we're trying to rise and meet this challenge. 1 year ago, all of the participants were surprised by the disappearance of a strategy in this regard. We tried to bring a concrete solution to the climate agreements. In the past few months, we've seen the question of the Mediterranean coming back. Mediterranean of the future has its place, a modest place, but a concrete place that has been consolidated and has been one of the main key players in the area. Next year, the Summit of the Two Shores will be held here in Marseille. We must all be committed players. The Summit of the Two Shores is a relaunch of a strategy that was launched by President Chirac in the past with the Barcelona processes. The policy of security and economic and financial, social, cultural and relations between men, and pursued by Nicolas Sarkozy with a Union for the Mediterranean. Today, Emmanuel Macron is reinventing this today with the imperatives of our era. Everyone is waiting for France. It's a duty for Europe, and we know this. My dear Nasser Kamel, 10 years ago, the Union for the Mediterranean has existed for 10 years. You come and taken over this exceptional tool wanted by Europe, by the Euro-Mediterranean Parliament, by the world, in the context where the map is being redesigned with 5% of growth in the Mediterranean. So there is a growing awareness among everyone. The context with the energy and your knowledge will allow us to continue and to relaunch these dynamics. I would like to pay homage to the action of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian. He is a very robust support for me with regard to this relaunch. He is a major player in this process. He's the artisan of remarkable French diplomacy, and he leaves space for civil society, to economic and regional funds. It gives height and size by opening up to other players. The regions of the Mediterranean are the symbols of this. Our territories are full of talents and projects. Our diplomacy of territorial authorities is always under the auspices of our flags and our respective countries. It's easier for us to talk together because we're closer to reality, to the field, to our people. We're in direct contact with our populations and we have fewer constraints. We're not constrained by traditional diplomatic codes. It's an opportunity, a big responsibility. It is an additional solution to support the diplomacy of our countries. We must realize that we have the trust of the Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs and the numerous commissioners who are supporting our initiative, the confidence of the European of the Mediterranean and the Minister of Education and Youth from Palestine, Mr. Al-Nabulsi, General Secretary of the Minister of Youth of Jordan, and all of the ministers and former ministers of Tunisia, Morocco and Egypt who are present here today. We have the trust of the parliamentary members of the entire basin. We would like to pay homage to my Egyptian deputy who will be speaking this morning. We have the trust of the World Bank and the Centre for Mediterranean Integration. We have the trust of the foundation of Anna Lynch. I would like to pay homage to Elizabeth Guido. The trust of the main Mediterranean delegations represents important territories. Because Castries, Jejin, Tyre, Tanger, Jedwin, Haifa, Alexandria, Barcelona, Florence and others. Thank you for being here. We have the trust of very important organizations such as CPMET and President Guigo. We have the trust and you have come to listen us here today and to give us the opportunity to take action. This contribution is major. We are federated. We want to federate. We want to make sure that this region, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, with its major metropolises of Nice, Marseille and Toulon, which are Mediterranean due to its nature, geography and history. And for the past 30 years, there's been a true network of the Mediterranean, and everybody knows the dimension. It brings together the efforts of all of these territories in order to draw the Mediterranean, design the Mediterranean of the future. And now it's time to speed up. And And as the youth of ideas allows us to, youth and innovation is our capacity to upturn, disrupt. And these themes will lead us to act for 1 year around the call for projects. And beyond the pleasure of meeting together, we need to move towards concretize. In Marseille here, we are a unique team in the Mediterranean. We must be aware of that. And the newspaper of yesterday was testimony of this. As Saint-Exupéry used to say, there is only one true luxury, that is that of human relations. Our strength is the union of men and women who are in love with the Mediterranean. And we must achieve concrete and legible actions for our populations. For the President of Albania, we are honored by your presence here. Under your high patronage, this second act is taking place. You are the head of an important state of the Mediterranean basin, a country that is proud of its history. Your friendship for France is indefectible, and you have demonstrated this once again. All of the young people of the Mediterranean present here today, in particular in our region, will be able to talk under the kindly eye of a head of state. It is a big opportunity and a great honor. It is now time to open today's proceedings, and to begin, I propose a video of the European Commission, Mr. Han, who wishes to support all of our work. Thank you very much.
Monsieur le Président de la Région Sud.
President of the Region Sud, President of the Republic, General Secretary, ladies and gentlemen, the ministers, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, the members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen of the consuls, ladies and gentlemen, the elected representatives, dear Mediterraneans, this term is bringing us here today, and I apologize for those who I might have forgotten. Thank you for being so many here today from all of the shores of this sea that we share. The Mediterranean is our common heritage, our current presence and our collective future. Because our sea is not content with its glorious past, this space has a wonderful future. The Mediterranean is also a future turned towards youth and innovation. And it is precisely of this future that we are talking about. A future turned towards the youth, a future to think, to create, to hope, to build a common future by necessity and by a pragmatism. Today we're going to be talking about politics, geopolitics. We will also talk about culture, economy, design, modernity, creativity, realism, and hope, as these are the characteristics of the Mediterranean youth. We, of course, are aware of the difficulties of our present, but reality is a choice, and your presence of all of you here today demonstrates that this is that Mediterranean is a common hope. This common destiny is also a common culture. It's a crossword of the world, the Mediterranean, because it's a question of culture and cooperation. So we can immediately welcome the three speakers who will begin this second act of the Mediterranean of the future. It is the president of the Euro-Mediterranean Foundation, Anna Lind, for the dialogue between cultures, Mrs. Elizabeth Guigou, the General Secretary of the Union for the Mediterranean, Mr. Nasser Kamel, and the delegated interministerial ambassador for the Mediterranean, Mr. Pierre Duquesne. President reminded us the Mediterranean is an important zone also for the European Union. This space allows it to forge crucial relationships with its neighbours. And unfortunately, this is also where it is certain of its difficulties is concentrated. The Mediterranean, therefore, has a very particular place for the European Union. And this is why the European Commission, in charge of the European Neighbourhood Policy and the negotiations of extension, Mr. Johannes Hahn, wished to convey a message, even though he could not be with us today.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I regret not being able to join you today in person, and not only because the weather is probably much nicer in Marseille than here in Brussels. I'm particularly sorry to miss the exhibition showing the Helio project, which uses solar energy for seawater desalination. This project, which received financial support from the European Union, and which has been developed by a French company, addresses a crucial issue in the Mediterranean region, increasing water scarcity. It not only deals with a key challenge, but also fosters creativity and innovation and is therefore a vector of job creation. This is exactly the kind of initiative we need. Energy transition provides many similar opportunities, and this region hosts many Mediterranean centers of expertise that promote this kind of dynamic. The European Union naturally works in close collaboration with the Union for the Mediterranean on energy transition. Our long-lasting collaboration with the World Bank on infrastructure has also proven successful in the past decades. At the Mediterranean level, the European Union supports large-scale solar energy development, for instance in Morocco and Egypt. This is fertile ground for innovation. For instance, we encourage our partner countries to innovate through smaller solar energy systems for households or for companies and municipalities. These endeavors go in parallel to the deployment of other renewable sources of energy like wind and hydro. Once again, I believe that these new supply options help create job opportunities, enhance skills, and spur further innovation. Young people in the Mediterranean region are going to be the source and the vehicle for innovation. The challenge, particularly in the southern Mediterranean, is the creation of jobs and the matching of young workers' skills to those jobs. The European Union supports a series of actions to help young people develop their knowledge and skills. The best known is Erasmus, but we also support vocational training and entrepreneurship through a number of specialized programs to help businesses get started and to grow. The Mediterranean region offers vast potential which we need to tap into. Helio is one example of how innovative entrepreneurs can have a positive and long-lasting impact on the lives of their societies. Let's be inspired by this experience and promote a greener, more efficient, more stable and prosperous region.
The Mediterranean is a space of promise. It is also a space of contact and of cultural sharing. It is a place that is dear to the president of the Foundation, Anna Lindh, to Mrs. Elizabeth Guigou. President of the region Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur and the South, ladies and gentlemen ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen elected representatives, dear friends, I would first and foremost like to thank Renaud Muselier for the climate that he has brought to this event. You said earlier on, President, that there was nothing that is more important than human relationships. And I believe that that is what has brought us here together. We all have the same objectives, of course. We are all aware, proud and happy of the inheritance that we have received from our common cradle. We all have in mind our famous writers, musicians, our philosophers. I never forget to teach my students from political sciences, who I'll be going to see at the end of the afternoon. That's why I cannot stay with you for the entire day. All that we owe in Europe to the south of the Mediterranean. They are Arabic philosophers who translated the first. Who were the first to translate ancient Greek. In our monuments, in our architecture, in our music, in our cooking, we have all of this. And this fashions a culture, it fashions our memory. And above all, it makes us want to fashion our future. So here you have brought together not only institutions, people who hold responsibilities, but also young people. And here I would like to say just how happy we are of what we, the Annan Foundation, are doing, especially in your region of the South, and what we wish to do in the future. So the Annan Foundation, I say for those of you who are not aware of this, I'm sure that there aren't many in the room who don't know our foundation. The foundation was created in 2004 by the initiative of Romano Prodi, who was continuing on the initiative of Jacques Delors, who came here at the beginning of the 90s to begin the Barcelona process. So we've celebrated our 15th anniversary in Rome next week, in presence of Mr. Roudier. And the idea in 2004, you remember that a high American official talked about the clash of civilizations. Well, we do not believe in this. And we created the foundation to say that there is no clash of civilizations. If there is a clash, it is a clash of ignorance. And therefore, the foundation was created to encourage and promote intercultural dialogue, and in particular to turn to the people and say that it's you, the young people, young men, young women. We have among our 5,000 associations that group together all of our national networks, we have a majority of young women. And we have the will, of course, to ensure that we understand each other better, that we respect the differences. They do exist, but they are a wealth. But let us never lose from sight everything that brings us together. Everything that brings us together through the past, but also our current presence, which is sometimes tragic, but which we can overcome, and everything that brings us together in order to build the future. So among our programs, we give a priority to young people in the 5,000 associations in the 43 countries, which is our scope. In fact, we work in 42 countries because, unfortunately, Syria is still on standby, of course, until the end of the war. I believe that what is very important is that we have, and we promote, all of us here who are convinced of this, that we need another view of youth. In our societies, through the media, through everything that is conveyed every day, because we are experiencing a number of tragedies, we too often see young people as a source of problems, threats sometimes, and violence. We know very, very well that that is not true. Practically all of our young people have a constructive attitude within society. And within the programs that we develop, in particular our Beacon program, which is called Young Mediterranean Voices, which is strongly supported by our member states and by the European Committee, what do we do? We educate, we train educators and young people to engage in this intercultural dialogue, which is demanding because young people all have the same concerns. Jobs, first of all, security, of course, the will to control their common future, and the will to understand each other and to exchange with others. And we face the same questions: gender equality. What is the place of religion within our societies? They're not easy questions. Sometimes we approach them differently, but we have something that brings us together, and that is to say that we have the will to go beyond these differences without cancelling them out, to really identify our common values, which are, of course, those of mankind. And through this program, we tell the young people and we provide them with the possibility, first of all, to intervene within public debates. That's very important. To become familiar with their institutional environment, to resist fake news, these famous fake news that are increasingly present, and through the partnerships that we develop with Facebook, for example, or with major institutions. And we give them the possibility of intervening, to have the intellectual and material tools to intervene within public debate in order to counter the discourses of hate, violence, radicalization, In short, everything that can destroy mankind. Of course, we have very important institutional partnerships here with and elsewhere, with the World Bank, with the United Nations, because the big major institutions, not just the European Commission, but realize that we must compose with civil society. The action of the governments, of course, and the parliaments is absolutely essential. But to go deep into society, we must work with civil society. This is what you're doing here in the region. You recalled this earlier on, President. Because we know very well that local action, which we call bottom-up action, the initiatives that you are taking within your territorial collectivities and which our associations take, represent a tremendous wealth, because it means that it is the citizens themselves that take on board their own present and their own future. And of course, with, for example, the United Nations, each year, we undertake actions to see how young people can contribute to peace. I must say that when in the United Nations, each year in the ministerial meeting of young people, we have young people from Libya, for example, or people that on the borders of the war in Syria. It is very poignant to see what they say and what they're doing. They're creating their own jobs. They act in the field. They're there to guide the refugees also who might go and die in the Mediterranean. So young people, I believe, already do a great deal for peace, and we must make this known. Of course, we have partnerships with many media as well, so that we can convey this message, this positive message on youth. And above all, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that we also need a more positive view of our region. I was speaking of this recently in New York with the Vice President of the World Bank in charge of our region, Mr. Hajj, who said this is what we need the most. We are living among tragedies which unfortunately have become multifold in recent years. And yet, and we measure this in the Annalyn Foundation, because every 3 years we do a major survey in 13 countries, and we question 13,000 people. What are your aspirations, you who are part of our society? With the majority of young people in these surveys, of course. What have we seen over the past 10 years? We're in the third survey, and we see that there is a convergence of the aspirations of our societies from the north and the south. We see that there is a stability in this desire to build a common future, and we must, of course, make this known more. In the latest survey that we will publish next year in Rome, to the specific question that we asked these 13,000 people, what do you think is the most important in our region? We can quote them. Terrorism, questions of uncontrolled migration, deaths in the Mediterranean. Yes. People say, yes, tragedy, our tragedies. These are our customary tragedies. But what is the most deep-rooted is that what brings us together is, first of all, the will to go beyond these and to build a common future. To close, I have 2 proposals for the Summit of the Two Shores, of which I think we will be speaking at length, and Pierre Duquesne will no doubt be talking to us about this later on. I have 2 concrete proposals, because it's all very well to talk generalities, and it's important. It gives us background, but above all, we must take action, as you do here in the region Sud. Mobility. We, in the foundation, have a program called Erasmus Plus Virtual that the Commission has asked us to manage. So we bring people together on the net, young people from the Mauritania who speak with young Danish people. It always yields something on subjects that young people are interested in. But virtual is all very well. Discussions, meetings, among young people, of course, is much better. It will not have escaped you that we are all increasingly closing our borders for security reasons, which are not negligible, of course. How can we continue to organize events and mobility and meetings despite this reality? Well, I believe that we must first develop procedures that will facilitate these meetings. For example, the talent passport that was voted in France 2 or 3 years ago. This is developing with certain countries, far less with others. But you can see that this allows us to, young entrepreneurs, young creators, to circulate, young people, quite simply, who are members of associations. And maybe because so far the Erasmus program, a wonderful program of the European Union, and maybe, moreover, the only one that is really well-known and popular. There are 23 million young people in the European Union only. It's few, but it's a lot. It's extended with Erasmus to the south of the Mediterranean in the past few years. The university and increasing number of young apprentices, I believe truly, and this is my second proposal, that we should work because the budget. The representative of the European Union here in Marseille has confirmed that the budget will be doubled in the next financial sequence. I think that we should all work together on an Erasmus of associations, because they're not just the young university students. There are those that have dropped out of the school system and who nevertheless within these associations, as we see here in Marseille, and I'd like to pay homage to the lead partner of our French network, who is from Marseille. We see this. There are young people who set up projects, cultural projects, social projects. So if we could make progress on these two proposals, which are dear to me, I always have a warm welcome, but now we need to actually do things. Once again, thank you, President. Thank you to all of those who are here. Thank you to all the young people. Thank you for everything that you're doing, and above all, everything that we will continue to do together.
Thank you, Mrs. Minister. Before giving the floor to the ambassador, you talked about listening and cooperation. These are key elements of the Union for the Mediterranean. And we are going to listen now to the Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean, Mr. Nasser Kamel. Ladies and gentlemen, dear Renaud, dear old friend, at least 2 decades, President of the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region, Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen, ministers, ambassadors, Mrs. Guigaud, President of the Annalint Association. I shall be brief, since I will take the floor again during the closing session this afternoon, next to the French Minister of Foreign Affairs. But I still wanted to share with you a couple of ideas this morning. First, to congratulate my friend Renaud, President of the Provence-Alpes-Côte region, for this most significant initiative, Mediterranean of the Future, or the Future of the Mediterranean, and is quite the key, the source of what we do at the UFM. And I'm very happy that you decided to organize this key forum, and very useful for our joint efforts. The choice of topics, youth. Well, we live in a region, not just in the south, but the south and north, where the young population is more than 60% of the, amount to 60% of the population, and within a few years, this will be 70%. So they're not the future; they're the present of the Mediterranean. They will drive economic growth. And it is for them to decide about the main orientations and priorities of our societies. And it is for us to try to understand them, follow them, help them, as best as we can. Renaud, your choice to organize this meeting and to have transformed the region into a region which is capital of the Euromed zone. I know your commitment. I've known your commitment for more than 20 years. At the time of the Institute of the Arab World, but today in Marseille, and the choice of Marseille is clearly a logical choice that will make it possible, through the unique position of this region, to find synergies and cooperation in all domains that concern us, including that of youth and innovation. This is why we agreed together that next year we'll work hand in hand for the third event, which will be even more successful than this one, which will be quite a challenge because the success today is already very impressive. So we'll do our best to work hand in hand so that the third event shall be well focused and successful. I would like to share with you a quote, not very well known, but which demonstrates the importance of this city. A quote from a poet born in Cairo called Joseph Adjoub. He was born in Cairo at the beginning of the 19th century, but who lived in Marseille and became a city of residence and heart. And he was the author of first poems in French translated into Arabic of contemporary Egypt. And in his poem entitled "The Broken Lyre," he talks about Marseille, which is true poetry, will transport Europe to the desert of Africa. And this is what you're doing. You are making Marseille the bridge. You are making Marseille the bridge, the passage, the European city that will bring Europe to the south and which will bring the south to Europe. And for this, I would like to thank you warmly. And to conclude, just one word concerning what Pierre Duquesne will mention later on. I do hope so. When it comes to France and the role of France, France is a European country, but it is also a Mediterranean country, still involved in the Mediterranean region. And together with Mrs. Guigou, and you all said, has worked for decades on the Barcelona process, then the Union for the Mediterranean, and today President Macron is reasserting the Mediterranean ambition of France by saying that by announcing a Mediterranean summit. Well, we can only agree with such initiatives. This renewal of activism, French activism, and the Euro-Mediterranean space will never be active and dynamic without France at the center of that effort. And this is what I say, and this is what I think. This initiative, I'm certain, will make it possible for us at the Union for the UFM Secretariat to mobilize our network and expertise so that we could be fully involved, inshallah, to the success of this event. So this ambition of the president, of the French president, is a new commitment of France in favor of the objective of UPM, the objective of the future of the Mediterranean. And so I do believe that with our joint will to move forward and to make headway, I'm very optimistic as to our capacity and capability to act in the coming months and years. Once again, dear friend, thank you so much. I want to thank all the young people present here today and wish you all a very fruitful, successful conference. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. Excellency, your speech is awaited for, so I'll let you. Yeah. close this session. So it is a great honor, and even more so when, unfortunately, we talked before, when one talks before one's minister. So, Mr. President of the Region, Mr. President of the Republic of Albania, ladies and gentlemen ministers, ladies and gentlemen members of parliament and elected officials, dear Nasser Kamer, dear Mrs. Guigou, ladies and gentlemen, President, Director General, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors and consuls, and I will use an expression from sub-Saharan Africa, you know, whether who you are, each in your rank, title, and quality. So first, I have to start by asking you to apologize for the, on behalf of the Minister of Europe and Foreign Affairs, Mr. Jean-Yves Le Drian, is actually in Sicily to deal with the Libyan crisis. He will join us later on at the end of the afternoon to close this event. And you know, Mr. President, he really wants to be involved in the Act 2 of this Mediterranean of the Future. So, as I said, I have the difficult task to be one of the first speakers. A great pleasure to be with you here for this Act 2. I want to thank the Provence-Alpes-Côte region, its president, to organize this meeting. And by the way, I would also like to thank all the players who represent the city of Marseille here today. And this includes, of course, Jean Ouattara, Deputy Mayor of Marseille. And through them and through you, of course, just as we said, I have a thought about the tragic event of last week. And I would like to congratulate the work of the Avitem agency, the president, Agnès Rampal, the director general, Bernard Valero. This agency, which support Mediterranean territories and which fosters Mediterranean diplomacy among local authorities or entities. I'm very happy to be in Marseille because as an interministerial delegate of the Mediterranean, because of my function, I'm here quite often. I have a seat in the overseeing bodies of institutions such as Avitem, of the Center for Integration in the Mediterranean of the World Bank in the Villa of Almer. Moreover, I'm actively preparing, together with authorities, institutions, enterprises, and local players, the summit of the two shores, so-called so far, which will be held in the Palais du Pharo on June 24, 2024. 19, sorry. And if I could say so, I'm very proud of have been able to organize in Marseille last September, within the prefecture, a first meeting of the central administration civil servant of all ministries of Paris who deal with the Mediterranean. And this network of Mediterranean correspondent, which I created about a year ago, meets every quarter in Paris. So I was able to get them in Marseille. We were very discreet. We will come back. In all international entities where I represent our country, UFM or Annalene Foundation, I always have a thought for this city, and of course not forgetting the other Mediterranean territorial authorities or governments. Now, a couple of words about the topic of the day, youth and innovation. Well, questions associated with youth seem to be expressed differently on both shores, which what is intuitive for everyone is unfortunately what separates us. But there are less differences because I think that our youth, in fact, face the same structural and contractual problems such as professional training or professional insertion. And in what separates us, I would say that European northern societies are aging, whereas those of the south are still very young. But in fact, demographic differences are slowly being balanced. The mid-age average of countries in North Africa was 20 years at the beginning of the 90s. In the next decade, it will be 30 years. Another example, the use of the two shores suffer from high unemployment rate with variable intensity. Of course, youth in the Maghreb countries face really dire situation. But if we take the example of northern countries such as Spain, almost 40% of young people are impacted by unemployment. Just as a reminder, in France, 17% of the young French people between 15 and 29 belong to the so-called not in education, employment, or training categories. So they are not in education, training, or employment at a given time. So situations are not as clear-cut, and the aspiration of youth are closer than we think. That was reminded to us by Elisabeth Guigou. As to education and professional training, where youth face the same problems of access to suitable trainings, a new form of employment, and labor market which is transforming endlessly or ceaselessly, it is essential for us in the north and in the south to upgrade and modernize our training methods, renew our pedagogical practice. Many teachers in a converging and innovating manner. We must encourage development of school and university exchanges within the Mediterranean space and sometimes just by improving the visibility of numerous European programs that already exist and to facilitate access to the highest number. These exchanges between the conventional professional university training system, but also those between companies and with companies on the two shores, will help fight against massive unemployment of the youth. And beyond that, and even more, will help young of the Mediterranean to have their own understanding of the region as a shared space thanks to a better knowledge of their history, geography, and culture, which are common. So these exchanges, and this is the link in the theme of these exchanges are fostered by innovation. Mediterranean youth was able to get hold of social networks and new information communication technologies, and innovation, therefore, is the means and the objective of exchanges in the two directions. The manager of a Tunisian cluster said to me that he was able to welcome the young French startups in Tunisia. So, North must listen from the south or from the east of the Mediterranean. So that was the measure of an incubator. So, let's not fool ourselves. The young Mediterranean civil society, despite the problems it faces, is full of richness and talents, and it is for us to allow them to express themselves. And I'm saying here, innovation is the joint solution to the joint difficulties of our youth. So I come to the declaration of the President of the Republic, who said during the conference of the French ambassadors on 27th of August, and he did, that was mentioned by President, he said, quote, "We need to find again the line of different Mediterranean policy by learning from what we've succeeded and where we succeeded and what sometimes we could not achieve, by involving all civil societies, but also by reshaping a more inclusive Mediterranean policy, which is one of the conditions to reconsolidate the Maghreb." End of quote. As I said, the Minister of Foreign Affairs will tell you everything tonight, so that was an invitation to stay. So simply, as a teaser, let me give you two strong ideas for this year called the Summit of the Two Shores of the Western Mediterranean. First, we want to promote Mediterranean in all opportunities and of all players. Our mission must be that of all opportunities and not of all dangers. We should insist on what joins us, what groups us, not what divides us, and topics abound, promote Mediterranean agricultural methods, Mediterranean ports, tourism, the Mediterranean management of coastal cities, Mediterranean culture, trade and investment in Mediterranean, and this is an endless list. But on all these topics, we all have to learn one from the other. Mediterranean countries have to learn from their neighbors in the north, and of the north of Europe sometimes, but countries of the north, as I said, and so the shore, those of the Western Mediterranean and of the Oriental Mediterranean, and vice versa. So we want to initiate a process of bringing to light projects and ideas that will group us, which are positive. Second, the mission that we hope for is that of all players, not just the states, but all civil societies in the street of census. But sometimes I feel that this word of society, term of society, often is scary. So I would talk about non-governmental actors. It's a bit technocratic, but it's less scary. So organized non-governmental organizations, NGOs, of course, but of course, let's not forget them: companies, businesses, local authorities, research centers, everybody. And the so-called non-governmental players sometimes is a reassuring term. So what we know is certain: development will not be possible without including all those players, and therefore it is even more true in our region since 2011. And this is the orientation of President Macron's proposal. Let me close by saying that I'm certain that the works carried out today will contribute to, will feed this initiative. So, if you don't mind, Mr. President, I've registered my collaborators in each workshop so as to listen, note down the good ideas, priority to views. So all my collaborators are young. You want to be able to identify them. Priority to innovation. They will keep mainly the new ideas, not the cliches. We want to push for measures and concrete measures and projects, and not to create an institution. But if I could follow with a bit of a joke, Mr. President, I'm afraid that the mission of the future should, in fact, soon become an institution. And trust me, I'm very happy about it. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador, for this clear summary of the programs ahead of us. Mr. President, Mrs. Minister, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Ambassador, thank you so much for this opening of the second act. As we just heard, governments are sending ambassadors to the Mediterranean region. Some people devote their lives. And a few months ago, we've lost politicians, and Antoine Sfer was a tireless link between the West and the East. And to start this homage, I would like to invite Mrs. Agnès Rampal, President of the Euromed Commission of the South region. Mr. President of the Region Sud, Mr. President of the Albanian Republic, Mr. Secretary General of the Union for the Mediterranean, ladies and gentlemen, ministers, governors, presidents of region, the numerous elected officials who are present here, ladies and gentlemen, President and Secretary General of all institutions dealing with the Mediterranean, and as we said, dear Mediterranean friends, it is a family meeting today. So you've asked me, Mr. President, to entrusted me with the homage to Antoine Sfer, who passed away October 1st, following, unfortunately, a fight against cancer. So he was a journalist, a writer, a political analyst, a great friend and a pedagogue. He leaves to all his readers, correspondents, and or public, certainty that his thinking, which was deep and subtle, is going to be missed. His great knowledge of the Arabo-Muslim world and the Middle East and Mediterranean geopolitics combined very well with constant and remarkable courtesy and friendliness. He was paying attention to humans, and he did through and he was very open and available to all. The precision of his highly documented analysis, as well as his abilities to understand and anticipate the challenges of our world, were with no second to none. Besides the numerous work, articles, and presentations, he founded the Cahiers de l'Orient, where summaries and the most relevant contributions were mentioned concerning the most complex stakes and challenges. Though the future of the Cahiers de l'Orient should be of a concern to us, because his daughter Marie-Josée is fighting almost alone to continue the work of her father. So Antoine would always remind us his love for France, for which he felt recognition, and he was very grateful. Last year, he wanted to be with us through images within the framework of a filmed interview done with his friend Renaud Muselier. So he wanted, indeed, bravely, despite the disease, be involved in this amazing and new emergent dynamics driven by Renaud. And he, more than ever, he would have, of course, he would have been here today, because for Antoine, the major challenges that the Mediterranean region faces are just as many opportunities that the Mediterranean youth will, of course, handle and take benefit of. So we go from 427 to almost 525 million inhabitants in 2025 was for him a great opportunity for all Mediterraneans, even though this implies true changes and adaptations of the way we live. Yes, indeed, because there will be 300 million young people who will get to the labor market in the MENA region between now and 2050. They will come with their enthusiasm, their adaptability, inventiveness through networks which are transforming our societies. We do also witness an awareness process for solidarity in the Med region, and this solidarity was not forged by history, but it imposes itself to us all today, because our two shores are linked and interdependent. They are so both because of climate, environment, but they are also for the major challenges of our societies, which is the unemployment plague, the plague of unemployment, which takes place in a context of radicalization and major migration issues, which lead to the attitude of a return to nationalistic vision. So this young population was born with the internet, and this will make it possible for our society to evolve in all domains, being that of knowledge, research, and technologies. Likewise, for the advent of new professions, but also for the spirit and the mindset of our societies. Muslim Averroes said, ignorance leads to fear, fear leads to hatred, hatred leads to violence. So our dear Antoine would add, would add, the 21st century will be religious who will not exist, as Malraux said, but how can we avoid that man should get hold of God and claims itself to be the herald of God? So how could we reestablish link within religion for this? The 21st century should be that of transmission of knowledge to all. This is the very purpose of the mission of the future of Project Acte, because our youth is the keystone of our future, and we must give it all the possible means to face the challenge. We are aligned with the youth of the world, and therefore it will be able to oppose itself to totalitarian dangers and the environmental issues, the wisdom of reason born in this part of the world, and we all here because, thanks to the mission and vision of President Renaud Muselier. So now to continue the homage to Antoine's Fair, we now welcome Bernard Elgoul, director of the Menton campus of the Institute for Political Studies.
Mesdames et messieurs les présidents,
Ladies and gentlemen presidents, ladies and gentlemen ministers, ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, dear Marie-Josée Sfer, who wished me to pay homage to your father, Antoine. Let it be known, dear Marie-Jo, that your wish honors me. To just give a few minutes to the thoughts of François Eyre would be to reduce it. So allow me to share with you this morning a flourish of his reflections that marked me the most, and allow me to organize these around the two main themes that fed them, Lebanon and France. Lebanon, firstly, this message country, as Jean-Paul II called it, this laboratory of institutionalized dialogue that is unique in the Middle East. This Lebanon, for whom I pay homage to the numerous representatives here today, first and foremost the General Consul of Lebanon, based in Marseille, Mrs. Sonia Boisa, who worked so hard for our country. This Lebanon, who Antoine Sfer said, who preserved the existence of a Christian community in a Near East that was emptying of its Christians, a Christian to whom Antoine Sfer did not like to call from the East. Those of you who knew him no doubt remember what he would say. Do not call me a Christian of the East, as if we would call it a shrimp in the sea. So I would say otherwise that you are the Christians of the West. And in the Near East, one of the most main countries are pushed to exile. It's an Occident that is losing its health. As a patriot said, Antoine Sfer, the Near East is losing its Christians as it lost its Jews in the general indifference. And Orient Sfer denounced this drama in the fact that it was universal, because whether you're a believer or not, we know that these communities are the living testimonies of the origins of Christianism, testimonies that can no longer resist the destructive threat. Because now we say, as Antoine Sfer said, this Middle East is declined either in a deathly identity or a folk identity. In a region where the recourse to violence is no longer taboo, where the exacerbation of individual identities is no longer an exception but the norm, in a region where the apostles of dialogue have disappeared, and when the in-betweens, the go-betweens disappear, when the intermediates are extinguished, in a region that no longer wishes for mediation, in a region where negotiation is synonym of weakness and an admittance of failure, it is indeed the biodiversity of an entire space, so proudly incarnated by Lebanon, which is dying, and our silence is even more guilty. But Lebanon is also the country that maintained the nation-state and this political territorial concept born from the Treaty of Westphalia, in a region where percolation often has not worked. And Antoine Sfer often underlined the structural problem of the Middle and Near East, and that is the failure of the post-colonial stage. A number of leaders of the Arab world accessed power from the popular vote, be it Nasser in 56, Bourguiba in 57, Gaddafi in 69. This capital of popularity was progressively dilapidated, and the state that these leaders contributed to creating, unfortunately, have often been a failure. In the place of the modern state, I will not talk about democratic state, we progressively were witness to the installation of military regimes, transforming real hereditary republics, as Antoine Sfer called them. Be it in Libya, where Gaddafi since 1969 was putting forwards its affiliation with Islam, and the son Gamal in another country, and the president of unified Yemen since the 70s, wished to see his eldest son take his place. And through all these years of reign, the state institutions were entirely failing. And Salamé, another compatriot on transfer, former Minister of the Culture of Lebanon and currently a Special Envoy of the United Nations in Libya, said they were democracies without democrats. In other words, behind the facade of a modern state, a clone or a minority of which the Middle East is a mosaic has taken power, monopolized the institutions, and have made the state an instrument of domination and exploitation of its society. It is the state that gave these minority groups a power that they did not have before. In the image of the Alawites in Syria, the Clan decree in Iraq under the reign of Saddam Hussein, president from 1962 to 2003. And to refine this failure, in order to buy the favors from the West, these regimes claimed to be secular. And they presented themselves as the rampart to Islamism. This policy that in fine contributed to erecting the Islams as the opponents and allowed them to legitimately oppose them in the first democratic elections, as we saw in Tunisia, Egypt, or Libya. Whereas the Islamists were absent from the popular uprisings of 2010 and 2011, as he used to repeat. France, the second main subject that has always animated his reflection. It is France that he never ended to criticize. This France, Antoine Soyer recalled us, too often forgets the history of capitulations, in virtue of which François I had certain rights, and above all this France that he never ceased to cherish. And he defended the superior principles that formed its basis, the Republic, first of all. The res publica, the public thing. Antoine Sfer always referred to this gaffe. The republic that Antoine Sfer always preferred to the concept of democracy, the pure power of the people being by the force of things very complicated to truly implement despite the discourse of contemporary populist movements that falsely claim to embody the will of the people. Secularity, then, although Antoine Sfer never lost an opportunity to tell us with nostalgia the blessed period of his Lebanese youth where confessional fluidity allowed him, and I quote him, to go and chat people up in the mosque on Friday, in the synagogue on Saturday, and in the church on Sunday. So he said religion was intimate and it only concerns the believer. This secularity, which is a legal principle and not a moral principle, but was englobing, as Antoine said. It allowed us to want to live together. The secular republic is one and indivisible, he said. It cannot bend to other laws. And Antoine Sfer constantly denounced the attacks on this secularity, the ingerence of foreign countries that funded associations and cultural places in France and that were not openly denounced. The terrorists who wished to challenge France to safeguard a national community and which, through the prism of religion, wishes to divide citizens, whereas France is a remarkable machine for integration. Integrating French citizens of Muslim confession is not only possible, he used to say, but it's what we do every day in school, in the companies, in the administrations, the universities, and the research laboratories, because citizenship is one of the bases of the French Republic. And finally, the language, French language and culture, which is a vehicle for thoughts. And Antoine Sfer said, France is looking for a policy and direction of the Middle East. He questioned that it builds schools, high schools, universities in the Arab world. Let us do a mass manufacturing of French speakers, because English has become the universal language of communication, but French has remained a language of education and culture. There is a demand for France, he insisted, because French speaking is not just a language. Francophony is a way of living. And France, he wrote for more than 40 years, is one of the last privileged places of freedom. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, that our country remain this privileged place of freedom, and that Antoine Sfer's thinking continues to shed light on our way so that his memory remains alive for many years to come. Thank you very much for your attention.
Merci, Monsieur le Directeur.
Thank you, Director. The memory of the kindly eye and demanding nature of Mrs. Fair will guide our work, I hope. Earlier on, we heard the ambition of this second act. It is now time to set our sights and begin our work. And it's Mrs. Caroline Porte-Montier, Vice President of the Region South, in charge of international relations, who will introduce the official speeches. President of the Region Sud, my dear Renaud Muselier, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to live moments such as the one we are living here today in Marseille. President of Albania, ladies and gentlemen, the ministers, the ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, the presidents of the territories of cooperation of our region, Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur, ladies and gentlemen, the ministers of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. Mediterranean of the Future, in its Act 2, is launched today under the auspices of an exceptional man, Mr. Antoine Sfer, your friend, President, your very dear friend. This Act 2 obliges us this year again. It obliges us here in Marseille, a mirror city of the Mediterranean, which, as the poet Attache said, as poets say, attaches and retains the penitent traveller. In Côte d'Azur and in all of the regions of the Mediterranean world, represented by the highest personalities here, obliges and commits us duly for a common destiny, as you said, and to rise and meet the challenges of our youth at the heart of innovation. We know how far its geographical position, its sociological composition, and the positive image that the people of the south of the Mediterranean have are as many assets that impose Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur as the center of projection of the Euro-Mediterranean policy of France. A place of culture that have mutually fed and nourished each other thanks to mutual dialogue throughout history. This reality makes Mare Nostrum a space of civilization where France and Europe have drawn certain major elements of their identity and their values. Recalled here Ambassador Jean-Yves Le Drian last year during the Act 1. As you said, thanks to concrete realities, the Mediterranean similarities are flagrant. And it's the world that can mature in respect of identities around the sea that has, on a number of occasions, brought peoples together. As I was saying, Act 2 obliges us duly because it speaks to the youth and it speaks of innovation. These are the driving forces of the commitment of our policy of the President Renaud Muselier to weave together a Mediterranean tapestry of cooperation, of co-development of the youth, of collaboration. This youth of the two shores can co-imagine, co-design and co-manage common projects. Our ambition, therefore, must make us move quickly because it's urgent to build a Mediterranean policy of projects to invent with even more boldness a European policy for youth, which should make education, vocational training, and university cooperation the main work sites of its action. A Euro-Mediterranean policy that brings together this very large community of the Mediterranean youth that is dynamic because it bears this brilliant spark, which is fertile, which is creative in order to build for you, with you, the digital economy from one shore to the other. So yes, the Mediterranean is a hyphen. This basin, which it's a link, and this all of these territories that are alive and this are ready. We demonstrate this today with our president. We're ready to work with cohesion for a common priority, which is the Mediterranean youth and innovation. The educational policy play a key role in our country as true pillars of the development of our youth, for whom the digital revolution is that of the flowering of all talents. President of Albania, Mr. Metan, the Minister of Education and Higher Education of the Palestinian Authorities, Mr. Saidam, General Secretary of the Ministry of Youth of Jordan, Mr. Al-Naboussi. You will speak after my brief allocution and will no doubt recall how far the vision of political men and women that form our countries hold this heavy responsibility of promoting this. President of the Union of the Mediterranean, once again, you are giving us the honor of being present here upon the invitation of Mr. Muselier. And this shows that on the eve of the Summit of the Two Shores, the common will to relaunch a Mediterranean policy that is Euro-Mediterranean, and that deserves to be written together for the future of the world, for the future of the citizens, and the Mediterranean. Thank you very much.
Merci, Madame la Vice-Présidente.
Thank you, Vice President. The Vice President of the World Bank wished to be with us here today. He unfortunately could not be with us. However, he did wish to convey a message. I will allow you under the high patronage of Mr. Farid Belhaj.
Assalamu ala kul al-hadirin. Bonjour à tous les participants. Welcome to all participants and good day to all of you. J'aurais véritablement souhaité être avec vous aujourd'hui. Malheureusement, pour d'autres considérations, je ne peux pas être avec vous à Marseille. Marseille est une porte de la Méditerranée, une porte vers l'Afrique du Nord, une porte vers le Moyen-Orient. C'est cette porte-là que vous avez choisie comme étant la plateforme pour cette réunion, pour cette conversation concernant le futur de la Méditerranée, cette mer qui nous appartient, cette mer qui nous a vu, qui a vu nos civilisations et nos cultures s'épouser et produire des choses extrêmement importantes pour le monde. Eh bien aujourd'hui, nous souhaitons parler du futur de cette région, du futur de cette mer Méditerranée. Et ce futur, nous le voyons à travers l'investissement que nous devons porter pour les jeunes de cette région, pour les jeunes du Moyen-Orient, pour les jeunes de l'Afrique du Nord, pour les jeunes de l'Europe. Il faut que des opportunités s'offrent à ces jeunes, à leur ambition. Ces jeunes sont éduqués, ces jeunes sont ambitieux, ces jeunes souhaitent voir un futur brillant s'offrir à eux. Eh bien pour cela, la Banque mondiale s'investira dans le développement humain, dans l'éducation, dans la santé. Elle s'investira aussi dans les nouvelles technologies parce que c'est l'avenir, parce que nous ne pouvons pas nous résoudre à deux Méditerranées et deux économies à vitesse différente. Et parce que nous allons aussi nous engager dans le développement du secteur privé, qui est un secteur primordial et qui sera le moteur de la croissance et le moteur de l'ambition de cette jeunesse. Nous sommes avec vous aujourd'hui, mes collègues qui sont à Marseille. Nous sommes ici à Washington et nous vous promettons, et nous promettons aux jeunes de la Méditerranée, que nous ne nous lasserons pas d'investir dans cette énergie, d'investir dans cette jeunesse et d'investir dans ce potentiel. À très bientôt, j'espère, et bonne continuation pour cette conférence.
Alors, une des clés de la construction de la Méditerranée du futur,
So one of the keys to the construction of the Mediterranean of the future is the participation of all of the regions and all of the countries that are on its shores. The inclusion and collaboration at all levels of these states with the same sea are essential. It is to underline this international cooperation that our next speakers will be taking the floor. So I have the privilege of welcoming on scene Dr. Tabadel Hassan al-Basri, Minister of the Youth of the Kingdom of Jordan, and Mr. Minister Sabri Saida, Minister of Education and Higher Education of the Palestinian Authorities.
Bonjour. Tout d'abord, je voudrais
Good morning. First of all, I would like to pay homage to all of the most important guests and greet in particular the President of Albania and the President of the Region South, and to all of those who have worked for the organization of this event, which shows the love that you have for the youth of the Mediterranean.
Address you today on behalf of the Minister of Youth and Culture Affairs, Dr. Mohammed Abrumman. As we gather today in an effort to address how to work together to create a variable environment to foster youth and innovation in the Mediterranean. Our youth are our greatest asset. They are the future and the present. And the infrastructure to the development and the growth of the Mediterranean. Now, it's our job to facilitate and expedite the support to them. We must equip them with all relevant, tangible and intangible resources. However, doing it in the traditional way will not have the proper impact in place. We need to empower them to practice innovation, offer them thinking space of technological development, and engage them in the development process of the new educational curriculums. His Royal Highness Prince Hussein bin Abdullah II, the Crown Prince of Jordan, said, and I quote, "Youth are strategic asset. They are real wealth. This is what I see every day in the youth of my country, Jordan, and my peers around the world." It's with no doubt unpleasant and unfortunate what the region is going through during the extremely difficult times. But difficult times are strengthening youth, allowing them to continuously thinking out of the box and eager to learn in different ways and forms to overcome their difficult situation. That being said is never enough. They need qualified support and ongoing knowledge sharing from pioneers in all possible sectors, both public and private, while maintaining their and utilizing their ideas, creation and implementation to bridge several gaps, public-private gaps, sector gaps, age gaps, and gender gaps. We should not fail to mention the importance of cultivating, nurturing, and developing interpersonal skills and soft skills, as importantly as we concentrate on education. Such skills, whether it be leadership, communication, self-esteem, mindfulness, and ability to maintain our values and core beliefs. The core beliefs are the cornerstone to our youth and their personal and all over growth. Youth aim high, and not only to be active participant in their inner circle, rather have active, concentrative role in the society and region as a whole, which will have impact on the overall youth international development. Ladies and gentlemen, with all that being said, and taking into account of the certain political, social, and economic situation in the Mediterranean undergoing, we owe it to our youth to provide them with all the opportunities and education that needed. Our region's success lies heavily in the hands of the youth generation of today, as today's youth are tomorrow's leaders. And if we provide them with our power, we need to provide our youth with the best education, health, right priorities, while they are maintain their strongest values and culture. Then we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and the solution will service surprising all obstacles. Before, we was talking about youth, they are the future. But now, they are the generation now. So we feel the spirit of youth everywhere we go. And we call them our future and our present. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Minister.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends and esteemed young men and women attending this event today, I wish to speak in Arabic, if you don't mind. So I see that our youth here are circulating the interpretation devices, so I'll give them a minute until they have them distributed so they are able to listen to my speech. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
Good morning. Good morning to all. I wish a wonderful day to this Mediterranean, and I would like to thank the organizers for your wonderful welcome. And I would like to thank the President for the kindly attention that he has given to this event. Before talking about the youth and innovation, I would like to come back to the words said by Mr. Muselier when he said that he is part of the generation that has not experienced war, and that he does not want to be the last generation to not have known war. And when we suffer war and when we are bombarded, this war is the greatest tragedy of the world. I'm now going to talk to you of the young academics in the Gaza Strip, and I will also talk of the entire population who is suffering from the Israeli missiles today. It is time to end the Israeli occupation, and it is time for mankind to bring to an end the longest occupation in history of mankind. And this is, for this reason, we do not like a war. But we are trying to live with everybody. And with, thanks to our cultures, we hope to have a prosperous future. When we speak of youth and innovation, the law of the political world tells us that honesty is the main direction when we talk of education. I'm going to speak honestly. Maybe not everybody will like it, but I always ask how many children throughout the world wake up every morning and like going to school. How many of these children are happy when they discover that school is closed today for political reasons or due to bad weather? I think that in education, we must face up to reality. The technologies of the world have changed, adapted. Everything has changed in our life except for education. We still have a school with a teacher who will give a conference every day and to a great number of children. The way in which we use this education is different. Everybody tries to have a degree, and people find that it is not a problem to work to have a degree, or they try to have a degree as fast as possible without necessarily studying for it. The parents are the guidelines in education. Many young people go to university because their parents chose this direction for them.
So education outside of school, well, not just in school, but on the internet, but because of this chaos, some children can't even write in their mother tongue. Education has to go through a sort of a by-heart learning. They learn to special questionnaire to sit to pass to get an exam, and but when you want to assess the knowledge they gained, you realize that it is rather limited. So there is no professional training per se in a sort of way that would be really appreciated. Technical and professional training is for the losers only. No, for those who cannot succeed elsewhere. But this, unfortunately, this type of professional education and even entrepreneurial education is limited. And this is why we need to ask ourselves many questions in the Med region. So what are the solutions to be adopted? I think it is time to go from the use of knowledge to the creation of knowledge, to make sure that students and teachers will be the main focus of education. And we need to move away from the traditional education system and be more innovative. What we did in Palestine is that we tried to change completely our teaching methods. We've now integrated professional education and technical education into all courses, and therefore all students learn everything at the same time, professional, technical, and conventional education. And methodic learning could then incite young people to seek education. We found a method which is more dynamic, which creates an environment that will education based on technical education, entrepreneurship, and digital technology. And this movement, from this movement in 2016, the best schools in the world were in Palestine, and we were very successful. So I think today we need to break all the silos and do away with all the cliches associated with education. We can no longer function with such system, and we have to completely isolate those who function that way. We have to create new opportunities and launch actions on the ground. Preschool education must be a priority, must be mandatory. Just think if a child spends time at home and gets to school only at the age of 5 or 7, that's not good. There's a waste of time. The children cannot use their full capabilities when they're very young, and we should try to. We should invite adults to return to education, do research, and maybe contribute to the finance of research, entrepreneurship, and education. Philosophy, citizenship, societal issues should be part of our education process, even for the baccalaureate in Palestine, for example. We did transform this diploma to go out of the ordinary or conventional training and to work with professional education. And we need more partnerships. If you allow me, we cannot talk just about empty meetings. We should concentrate our efforts on actions. We can talk a lot, but we need to work hard to change. We have to work on site for innovation.
I would say sad are the nations that have no innovation partnership. And I think this meeting is a call for action, for us to be believing in the power of education, for investing in the future of our youth, for investing in the quality education that takes kids from the norms of tradition to the platforms of creativity. Ladies and gentlemen, it's often said that one hand is unable to clap alone. We need to be partners in this world to bring about a different reality. Yes, this region has been hit by extremism. Yes, this region has been hit by unemployment. Yes, this region has been influenced by years of conflict. But together we can make a difference. Together at heart we can make a difference. And I believe the legacy of live and let live is the only legacy that should prevail in this part of the world. With our European partners in the Middle East, we can make a difference. Believing in the talent and the opportunities of youth, we can make a difference. In going beyond the norms of education, traditional education is going to make a difference. I think, ladies and gentlemen, none of us in the room can believe that he is a child of a lesser God. We all believe in the same God, and for God we strive in the spirit of change and the spirit of prosperity. Stealing the words of an outgoing American president, can we do it? I think yes, we can. We can make a difference, and indeed we can change the world. Let this meeting be a meeting of action and not a meeting of words. I think we have had enough words. It's time for deeds. And I think time has come for that to happen. Ladies and gentlemen, as I conclude, I wish to say the following. These meetings are often perceived to be a meeting of friends. I think today, as of today, we should change the prospect of these meetings so they become the meeting of partners, a meeting of collaborators who can change the legacy of mankind from being dependent on the consumption of knowledge to being productive. And knowledge productivity is key to make a difference. I appreciate the opportunity and wish you a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary General and Mr. Minister. I also believe that we can make Méditerranée great again, but that's just me. C'est maintenant à son Excellence,
J'invite maintenant Son Excellence Edir Meta, the President of the Republic of Albania, who will close this opening official speech. Mr. President.
Dear President Muselier, thanks a lot for bringing me back in Marseille to address the Mediterranean of the future with so many young people. And when I see so many young people, I can say, yes, we can, to make Mediterranean great again. I come from a country which has shown that incredible change can happen in less than 3 decades. I come from a country which, before 1990, was the most isolated country in Europe. And I can say that it was North Korea of Europe, also at that time. And now, it's a country which is growing. It's a country which is not only NATO member, but which is a real European country and working to start accession talks for membership next year. And it's a country which is contributing with very positive energy for the stability of the Balkans, which has been always a very difficult region, not only for itself, but even which has been the Achilles heel of the Europe. And I come here in Marseille right after from this huge celebration in Paris for the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War, which we know from where it started. And I come from a country that 28 years ago didn't really know and was not aware that it was a Mediterranean country. Here we are. Dear Secretary General of the Union of Mediterranean, Mr. Kamel, dear ministers, Madame Guigou, ladies and gentlemen, after all these insightful remarks, I want to make but few reflections from Albania's point of view on this subject. Last year, I had a wonderful visit here in Marseille, having a great opportunity to meet President Muselier and other distinguished personalities and professionals. I left with the best impressions and was truly inspired from the fantastic accomplishments and opportunities witnessed during this visit. I extended to President Muselier my wish to establish a structured cooperation with PACA region, one of the most beautiful and prosperous regions of France and of the Mediterranean, being a powerful economic engine, ranked third most affluent region in France and 19th at European level. PACA is a living example of the great potential of the Mediterranean. Albania, besides being a Balkan country, is also part of the Mediterranean basin. We have pledged to further highlight our Mediterranean dimension, considering the extraordinary potential that can be used to the direct benefit of our citizens while strengthening our ties and cooperation. The potential of this region stands in its diversity surrounding 3 continents and in the pioneering mindset to see it as an opportunity rather than a threat. This is an ideal chance for young people who want to build a future to their liking. Young people are risk takers by nature, but the new millennials are also explorers and have surpassed all traditional frontiers to create a new relationship with the world. This creates an innovative space in the Mediterranean where different cultures, perspectives, and experiences can interact to equally benefit from the strengths and weaknesses of each other. I welcome the remarks of distinguished previous speakers, outlining concrete initiatives that foster the build-up of an essential alliance between youth and innovation to feature the Mediterranean of the future. I agree with their conclusion that youth mobility and education are key to ensuring its success. Mediterranean basin is blessed to also have the EU border extended in this region. Albania is a candidate country and already benefits from numerous European programs with target youth empowerment. Tens of thousands of Albanian students study in European schools and universities, including France. Hundreds are direct beneficiaries of local vocational trainings. Student exchange is becoming more frequent, as is twinning among public and private universities and colleges. We are still far below our potential in maritime and tourism industry. That is why we have prioritized this strategic sector, also in view of offering our youth a new opportunity so unexplored, equipped with perspective for further development. Learning from shining examples similar to the PACA region, and Marseille in particular, young Albanian men and women can channel their education in this field and become tomorrow's leaders of change in Albania's long western coastline. Other potential sectors include agriculture and ICT, which have started to boom already in my country. EU funding for startup businesses in these areas has been substantial, also thanks to these youngsters' learned ability to speak the EU languages, including French, as we are also part of Francophonie. Apart from such exciting picture, I have to admit, we also face serious challenges. Youth mobility can be a blessing, but in a sense, can as well become a curse if people do not return to their home country. Unfortunately, in the Balkan region, this phenomenon is becoming worryingly more present, as young people find it easier to live and settle to better state of living rather than staying home and fighting to make a change. This is a direct threat to our economic development and social cohesion. If not addressed in its root causes, it can produce a dangerous, vicious cycle difficult to break. That is why I consider that there is nothing more important than keeping our youth hopeful and motivated to live and work in Albania and in the Mediterranean. We have to combine better education with good governance and public policies, prioritizing investments on the skills that our economy and the private sector needs. The future is the reflection of the ambitions, leadership, and skills of today's youth. Our obligation is to be their guidance so that their dreams become true. We have to empower more the young people in Mediterranean to guarantee a safer region and more prosperous, because Mediterranean, without doubt, is the most beautiful region in the world. With a huge potential for faster growth and development based on our enormous natural resources, but in particular, and first of all, based on our human resources. Therefore, the future of our region counts on better education and motivation of our new generation. Once again, thank you very much, Renaud, for bringing back among so young people. Also, we have fantastic youngsters in Albania, and we hope to organize such event in the future with the help of the Secretary General also in Albania. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President of the Republic. So now we're going to work straight away to build this Mediterranean of the future. And for this, we are going to change the format to give you other voices of your visions and to waken up some of our young spectators who realize that the rhythm of international summit is not of that of stories on the Instagram. But anyway, the Mediterranean is not a maritime museum. It is a vibrant space for modernity, alive with youth, and these are the aspirations and the dreams of this youth which been forging its fate ever since the first sailors, because the history of the Mediterranean is a long story, and so is the future. So we're going to open this new page with the Mediterranean. It's opening to the world, its aspirations. We'll try to understand now with two roundtables. They will be facilitated by Mr. Frédéric Dubesset, Chief Editor of Econostrum, actuality news site specialized on Mediterranean basins, with the guest, and he will define the landscape, or will take stock of Mediterranean youth, and he will better help us to better understand their dreams, also their fears, because we cannot hide the fact that the Mediterranean is full of hope, but it is also a graveyard that is hosting part of its youth, some for the best, some for the most tragic dimension. The youth will shape the fate of the Mediterranean, because it is, therefore, since it is an epic story, well, I'll let you listen to those who says it so well. He's a writer, painter, poet from France and Morocco. He wrote on Mediterranean, on beauty, that, on travels and discoveries. He received the Goncourt Prize in 1987 for the Nuit Sacrée. He's got a message for the youth of Mediterranean, Mr. Tahar Benjeloul.
Il vaut mieux parler aux jeunes aujourd'hui plutôt qu'aux adultes, parce que les adultes, ils ont des préjugés bien ancrés. J'ai fait des livres pédagogiques parce que je suis un père de famille. Et un père doit répondre aux questions que lui posent ou se posent ses propres enfants. Et à travers eux, bien sûr, tous les enfants de leur génération. La moitié des populations méditerranéennes ont moins de 30 ans, donc ils vont s'adresser directement à ces jeunes et leur communiquer, leur transmettre un certain nombre de valeurs. J'utilise le canal pédagogique parce que je pense que c'est l'éducation qui peut nous aider à lutter contre la stupidité et le racisme, à lutter contre l'ignorance. Je trouve que la jeunesse méditerranéenne n'a pas la place qu'elle mérite. Elle mérite plus d'attention et elle mérite vraiment qu'on s'occupe d'elle parce qu'elle a envie de dire des choses. Et les Méditerranéens, ils ont cette capacité extraordinaire d'être tout le temps dans le mouvement, dans l'action, dans le désir de changer les choses. Le message que j'aimerais leur transmettre, c'est de rester actif, créateur, vigilant, intelligent, d'avoir de l'imagination, de ne pas du tout céder aux peurs, parce que tous les politiques actuellement jouent sur les peurs et le mouvement des populismes et du nationalisme étriqué qui sévit actuellement en Europe et surtout en Méditerranée est un mouvement très dangereux. Donc je dis aux jeunes, n'ayez pas honte de ce que vous êtes, soyez fiers de votre identité, de ce que vous êtes, qu'elle soit sexuelle ou culturelle ou historique. Soyez fiers et affirmez-vous, soyez vraiment des vrais créateurs, des poètes, des musiciens, vraiment des gens qui ont de l'imagination. Et n'hésitez pas, allez de l'avant. Si vous avez envie de faire de la peinture, faites de la peinture. Si vous voulez faire de la musique, trouvez des copains avec qui faire de la musique. Ne vous arrêtez pas, soyez actifs, soyez créateurs.
Bien, bonjour à tous. Je vais prendre donc
le relais d'Alexandre.
So I'm taking over from Alexandre for the next two roundtables, following this beautiful introduction from Tahab and Shalul. So we are now going to continue talking about this Act 2 of Mediterranean of the Future, that is the Mediterranean which has a fate shaped by youth. Two roundtables, one on the role of youth in the evolution of the Mediterranean, and the second one on youth and innovation. Indispensable alliance, and I will all welcome on stage the members of the first roundtable, Mariam Amir Nazer, Egyptian Member of Parliament, professor at the Nile University in Egypt. Thank you. Admiral Charles-Henri Duché, maritime French maritime prefect of the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region. Mrs. Erika Battista, director of the family incubator. Mr. Yvon Berland, president of Aix-Marseille University. And Mr. Thierry Fabre, founder of the Averroès meetings. Good morning. I'll stand in the middle. It will be easier. Thank you. So let's start with you, Mrs. Member of Parliament of the Egyptian Parliament. You're only two women, unfortunately, here. Mariam Amir Azer, who will speak French. She's a member of the Egyptian Parliament. You're specialized in IT development issues. So how does the use of your country to use this? So good morning. I'm very honored to be here, Mr. President of Albania, President of the Sud Region, Secretary General of the UPM, ambassadors, excellencies, ministers, and leader of organization, and the young one, participants as well. Well, I would say this is, we do have a digital use, so it should be said that in Egypt, for example, use is digital as well. In 2016, we were ranked first for externalization of software development in Egypt. And we should also congratulate Tunisia, which was ranked third in the Arab and African world in innovation. Now, back to Egypt, we have to say that our young people are highly competent. They work very hard with technology in their project to achieve their university diploma. There's a company called Eventus, and they develop conference software, and it is now well known all over the world. So their efforts are being made. Young people do like technology, and they're technology savvy, and this is why in Egypt we're teaching. We teach digital technology to young children. So you were a consultant before being a member of the Egyptian Parliament. You worked for the Ministry of Telecommunication and New Technology. So how do you help the young people and those who are not so young to manage such technologies? Well, we start by the fact that everybody in Egypt wants people to be knowledgeable in technology and innovation. So starting with the President of the Republic, President Sisi, delivers conferences and with the young people, and he stays in such conferences with all ministers in charge of economy and technologies to listen to the young people, their needs, and to organize workshops that will make them more skilled and more competent, in addition to give them ideas and how they could innovate and how to start their project. In the Ministry of Telecoms, there are several institutions which lead young people in this domain, and we organize workshops, and thousands of young people every year are trained in these institutions, in addition to incubators. As in any MED countries, North and South and East, I do believe that the youth are all interested by startups. So what do you do in Egypt to support them? I'm talking about, monitoring, mentoring, or funding. How do you do it in Egypt? In Egypt, in 2016 was the year of the youth, a year fully devoted to youth and to investment and to entrepreneurship. So there were seed funds to help the youth. We started doing this, but it is starting now. We are doing science cities. There are young people who are businessmen, and there are people from university to help young people in their projects. And in the telco ministry, there is an institution called ITSIDA. ITSIDA works for seeding of project, gives advice, look at the project which have a future. Recently, a contract was signed with IBM, and the purpose of that contract was to promote the entrepreneurial environment through workshops through IBM Cloud, and there will be also workshops in Alexandria, in Cairo, in Nasut for the young people in different technological domains to help them innovate. Not only that, but this contract will include Egyptian startups, young entrepreneurs in their IBM startup program to give them more advice and more capabilities. So there is a political will and the state will to help young people to do their startups. And as you say, young people love startup because it is, of course, something to fight unemployment, and it is also one of the results of innovation. Young people love to innovate because we say innovation is positive destruction. Well, maybe one last word about the youth, so in a wider scope. All I want to say is that indeed there is a lot of success for youth. They launch projects in ecosystems, such as Sow.com, which was sold to Amazon, or other projects which were met with success. So we started something and we wish to continue. And I want to say that Mediterranean without youth is a Mediterranean without future. And I like the proverb which says that a bad captain can turn the Mediterranean like the Atlantic, but a good captain can make the Atlantic like a Mediterranean. So let's all be good captains, leading our youth to a paradise of innovation through technology. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la députée égyptienne, et Monsieur l'Amiral, vous avez apprécié.
Thank you, Admiral. I hope that you appreciated this sentence. We're going to pass on to you, Admiral Duché, Maritime Prefect of the Provence-Alpes-Côte d'Azur region. Admiral, as an introduction, in order to clarify what your role is here, maybe you can just explain the scope of your responsibility in just a few words and the field of application. I'm sure you're going to talk of the Mediterranean here. Yes, yes. Thank you very much, President of the region, for having invited me to talk before you. I am, in fact, as you've noticed, I'm an admiral, therefore I'm in uniform, but I have two main functions in the Mediterranean, which allow me to have an overall view of what's happening. I have a military function. I am the person who implements the methods of the French Navy and its aircraft throughout the Mediterranean, but I'm also a maritime prefect, which is an interministerial function where I represent the state at sea. I represent all of the administrations of the state at sea, the customs, maritime affairs, etc., civil security. And this gives me a view over security and the economy, because there is no development without security. And the advantage of playing these two roles is that I can move from security to defense immediately, and from security to economy also. Everything is linked. And the Mediterranean is a very constrained space. It's not even 0.8% of the seas of the world, where everything is happening, where everything is close. And if you do not have this overall vision with all of the partners and the 24 riparian countries, then you might miss some major problems. And that is my daily profession, to have this overall complete vision between the economy, development, and security. Without security, economy and development cannot occur. So now we understand your mission. What are the means that you have available to implement these? And there is one point that we would like to address more particularly. How can young people be involved in your missions? Well, we have military means, because I'm a military. It's a means of the Navy, the aircraft carriers, small patrollers, submarines. And there are the means of which are civil means, and these are rescue boats, trainer boats, and the average age of all of these sailors in the French Navy is 29 years old. And I think that's the same for more or less all of the Navy, from the commandant, who is almost my age, a little younger, to the youngest sailor. So these sailors sailing across the Mediterranean are young. They're all young. The other important thing is that whether it be in the military field or in the field of security and the economy, people who are working constantly. At sea, you cannot innovate all the time. If you do not innovate, you're dead. If you do not innovate, you lag behind. So with regard to the French Navy, we are a young Navy and particularly innovative. And when you look at what the Navigroup company in Toulon is doing, it's a real incubator for innovation. And this innovation is done with the sailors, with the Acte sailors. So they're sailors who are modern, but above all, young people who implement these and who talk with their friends from other navies who are also young. So we saw that there are a lot of young people in the Navy. So when you explain this attraction of the Mediterranean Sea on this youth, what is it? Well, I think that there are specificities in the Mediterranean. As I said at the beginning, everything is close. And since ancient times, we've sailed the Mediterranean along the coastline. And young people, therefore, have always been able to go and see their neighbours. That's specific to the Mediterranean, far more than other seas, such as the Atlantic Ocean, where everything is far. We had to wait for 1492, for example. In the Mediterranean, that's not the case. So in the Mediterranean, young people are attracted by neighbours. And that's important because it shows that even though there are only 24 states around the Mediterranean, it does, we say that the Mediterranean is a bridge, but it's far more than that. It's far more than that because these exchanges between the three continents, it's also the only small sea of this type with three countries around it. And you have many opportunities to go and see your neighbours, and that's a good thing. But it's not enough. Because what must attract to the Mediterranean, it's not what is happening in your neighbours, but it's what happens between the two, because between the two is what we call international space, and that's the sea. And here we no longer talk about problems of nationalism. The sea is a common space. It's an international space. You have boundaries in the sea. They're administrative boundaries, but it's an international space. And that's where the youth must focus, because there's a lot that happens at sea and a lot that will happen. Everything that is environmental, that was the object of last year, but I would like to come back to this. The environment in the Mediterranean is not an option. It is an immediate duty, because it is a sea that is small. Everything that we do not do today, we will pay for tomorrow. So it's now, and for the environment, we must innovate. But we can also develop the economy intelligently. We have new technologies that will no doubt allow us in the future to produce with floating wind turbines a considerable amount of energy, which will provide an alternative. So we also need innovation, because to set up wind platforms at sea, there are problems with corrosion, etc. It's very complicated. We need innovation. So we need the youth, of course, to go and see their neighbours, as it always has done in the Mediterranean, to its neighbouring countries, but above all that it invests in the sea. that it conquers the sea, in the sense that there is a lot to be done, and above all, it is a place where links are forged naturally because it's an international space. And if, as I always tend to say, the Mediterranean is a source of global problems, it's also a laboratory of solutions. And the solutions, allow me to be somewhat directive, are at sea. Many of the solutions are at sea, because once again, it's an international space where there is no possible nationalism, even though there are interests. Thank you very much, Admiral. Now it's up to you, Erika. Erika Batista, Director of the International Incubator, The Family. Maybe a couple of words on The Family for those of you who are not familiar with this incubator, and then we can talk about what you've done. So first of all, hello everybody, and thank you very much for this invitation. I'm delighted to be here. So to explain what The Family is, we create a virtuous ecosystem where the best entrepreneurs, the most ambitious entrepreneurs can develop and find the means that allow them to achieve their ambitions. So we do this in three ways. Firstly, education, because we consider that 80% of the mistakes of new entrepreneurs can be avoided. The second pillar, services, because we use our network to go and negotiate the very best services free of charge for our members. So all of the startups today who have a family have access to free services such as cloud, etc. And the third is access to capital. So we support the startups in the quest for funds, because for us, capital is like a DNA for a company. You need to have the right investors who are aligned with their ambitions. So I'll add to this portrait the fact that you're present in Paris, London, and Berlin. There are about 200 startups that you have developed with 2 million euros, and you take 5% of the capital. Yes, our model is to take 5% of the capital in the companies with whom we work. And The Families is not a standard incubator with eco-working spaces. We consider that the value that we can bring to startup is not in a coffee machine or a photocopy machine. We need that, of course, to survive. But our differentiation stands in the long-term support, the advice, and strategy. So today you run the Paris office. We're going to talk about you a little bit. So the Paris office is the largest of the three offices. Talk to us about how you came to be where you are, because it could give some ideas to the young people in the room. Well, I have rather an atypical background. I come from Dominican Republic, where I was born, and I studied law. So I'm atypical in all sense of the term, because I was not born in France, and also because I was a lawyer in another life. So I began with law. I worked in a lawyer's practice for 2 years, civil law. And very quickly, I realized in my young career that I wanted to be part of the future, that I wanted to be part of a movement. And I wanted to participate in a far broader mission. So I decided to come to Europe, where I studied economy and innovation. And then I joined The Family 5 years ago when it was created. And you were the first employee, yes. You have to specify that. It's important. Another note, in the first time in the history of mankind, young people are today able to learn, to teach their elders. That has never been the case in previous eras. That creates problems. It's an advantage, but it also creates problems, in particular in companies. It breaks with traditional codes. So what can the solution be, the mediation between all of this, between old people in inverted commas and younger people? Well, yes, today we are in an extraordinary period. There's never been as much knowledge shared online free of charge. Today you can follow courses in Harvard. You can learn everything online. And it's a tremendous opportunity for what we call singularity. I don't know if you know the story of a young man who we call Mr. YouTube Man on the internet. It's another story, but Mr. YouTube Man, as we call him, is a young Kenyan who wanted to practice javelin, but he was not equipped. There was nobody to train him. So this young man decided to look at videos on YouTube for years and years with the best trainers, the best coaches in the world. And this young man ended up by becoming world champion in 2015. It was the first for Kenya. And he was the third performance in the history of the javelin. And so that's something that, but now in the family, I would like to talk to you about Maxime. Maxime is 15 years old, and he joined us 2 years ago. He was in a little town in the suburbs of Paris, and his dream was to have a virtual reality headset, except these headsets were really far too expensive. He couldn't afford it. Therefore, he decided to learn to code, to develop. So he went on the platforms that we have today, Code Academy and other, and he learns to code. He follows the probability course online to learn everything he knows, and then he ends up by developing a virtual reality headset himself at a fraction of the cost of those sold on the market. But what's wonderful in this story is that he ends up by even improving the existing technology on the market. So we took him to Facebook in San Francisco to meet the bosses of Nocool, who are the main manufacturers of virtual reality headsets, and they were fascinated by this young man who, all on his own, in his bedroom, in a small town in France, developed a technology that was better than theirs. So you see that innovation is not a problem because, after all, young people know how to innovate. They prove this. And the problem is the level of society that does not provide young people with the means to develop. So what solution could we find? Well, if you're interested by this subject, I suggest that you read the book Edge. Oh, yeah, she used a familiar word for book. Edge was written by Nicolas Collin, founder of Family, who you may know with, and he talks about how you can build a new social contract in a digital era. What does that mean? It means that digital today is a resource of innovation, robotics, artificial intelligence. It creates new professions, new disciplines, but above all, it creates chaotic courses which do not correspond to the Fordist society that we've developed so far. So it means that we must think together on how we can create new institutions that have meaning for this digital era, that we can no longer stop, so that we can follow these individuals, freelancers and entrepreneurs, in the course that they choose, which are not necessarily the standard ones. A final question, I will ask you to be brief. What is your vision of the Mediterranean startups? I know it's a very broad topic. Well, it comes back to what I was saying before. Today we're living in a world where the entrance barriers are crumbling. We don't need to live in the market where our clients are, so you can create a startup anywhere. In a family, anybody can we believe everybody can become an entrepreneur. And therefore, it's the time to use the leverage of distribution, which is social networks, access to capital via crowdfunding, etc. It's a tremendous opportunity for any entrepreneur. And in the Mediterranean, we have the advantage of youth and this creative energy that can take us very, very far, I think. Thank you very much. I would like to say, because you didn't dare to, that the family has a channel with free content. So please do take advantage of this if you want to move ahead and create startups. Thank you. We're going to pass on to Mr. Yvon Berland, who is the president of Aix-Marseille University, the first French-speaking university of the world. So you're engaged in a vast project today of European networks of universities. So what are your objectives? If you could just give us an overview of where you stand today. So first of all, I would like to pay homage to the president of the region, my friend Renaud Muselier, and General Secretary. Ladies and gentlemen, ministers, ladies and gentlemen, the ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, consuls, dear students, and dear schoolgoers. Yes, indeed, our university, which is indeed the largest university in the French-speaking world due to its size, 70,000 students works closely with all of the universities around the Mediterranean. And at the beginning of 2017, I had the idea of bringing together a few academics from around the Mediterranean, and to begin with from the northern shore, to organize this dialogue with all of the universities around the Mediterranean. And there was a discourse of the president at the Sorbonne in September 2017, president of France, to create European universities. And the acceptance of Europe to create European universities and a call for projects which has been launched and to which we must respond before the end of February. So with this outlook, the University of Aix-Marseille has committed with 7 other partners. I can name them. It's the University of Sapienza in Rome, the University of Athens, University of Madrid, University of Tübingen, University of Stockholm, Free University of Brussels, in the construction of a European university whose objective is to use the young people to go beyond the borders, to break down barriers and to build European citizenship. And all of this by encouraging student mobility. So the minister mentioned this Erasmus system, which is very well known. But it is Erasmus to the power of 10 that we wish to create within the framework of this future European university. We came together on Thursday and Friday in Rome, and I had the pleasure of seeing that my colleagues had appointed me as coordinator of this, the construction of this European university. And we have the objective of creating what we called a civic university, which is able to work in a collaborative manner, also on our activities of research and innovation, to work on the different challenges: climate change, health, nutrition, and all of the challenges that we are all too aware of. But I would like to add that it is not a subject that should only involve universities. It is a subject that should involve the territories. And I talked about this yesterday with President Musinier, and I must say that the region will help us significantly in this enterprise. So reassure me, reassure us. It will one day have a Mediterranean vocation? Oh, absolutely. So you see, I started earlier on by talking about the initial idea. So what I can say is we have the opportunity of this call for projects, and we want to go for that. Secondly, whatever the outcome of the jury who will examine our application, all 8 universities are convinced that we will continue, so we will do it. And our vacation, one of the main themes that we decided to work on is the Mediterranean, to work with universities from the south and to associate them with our project. And this is why the name Civic University is very important to us. And we have the same challenges, whether we're in the north of Europe, on the northern shore, the southern shore, we have the same challenges. So we have to work on these, and we have to really work on it together. What I wanted to add is that our university is very, very involved in Mediterranean collaborations, in research, in education, and innovation. I am convinced, and this is why I really threw myself heart and soul into this creation of a European university. I am convinced that the Mediterranean must not be taken into account only, if I talk about universities, only by universities of the northern shore and the southern shore. The Mediterranean is, or must be, a subject shared by Europe as a whole, and Europe must share the Mediterranean. And I think that working with the University of Tübingen on Europe, Mediterranean subjects is just as important as working with the University of Rome. So in the university, by definition, there are a lot of young people. A tremendous number in the University of Aix-Marseille. But the academic world is always seen as the old world. How can it reinvent itself? So when we talk about university, we think immediately of the academic world. Well, come and spend 48 hours with me and I will show you that the world has changed, really, really. The world has really changed. Firstly, you're right. For a very long time, the academic world was an isolated world. If we're talking about the university, people didn't really know what people did there. All that we did was to give knowledge and to ensure that we were transferring skills and to know whether these skills would be useful to society and above all useful for the person who owned those skills. So, but our world has entirely changed now. The university, the one that I'm the most acquainted with, is totally open to the city, participates in all events that take place within the city and within the region. We were talking about innovation. Here we will be inaugurating on the 5th of December. The university was an initiative with the industrial partners. We will be opening the Museum of Knowledge and Know-how in Aix-Marseille. So the world has changed. And we really look after how we can help young people we train to enter the professional world, how to train them to entrepreneurship, how can we support them towards innovation and to create their startup and their company. So really the world has changed entirely. In any case, the world that I know familiar with today in our university. So thank you, Mr. Yvon Berland. We're going to move on to Thierry Fabre. Your future students are applauding you. So Thierry Fabre, founder of the Rencontre Averroès. There's no need to advertise this event in Averroès. So the 15th to 19th of November in Marseille. It's 20th edition. I wanted to refer to this with what they contribute to the debate that we've been having since this morning, and also to mention your slogan, which is just thinking the Mediterranean of the two shores. So what are your thoughts on the current Mediterranean policy? So just a word on this thinking the Mediterranean of the two shores, which I think is very aligned with the project carried by the President of the Mediterranean of the Future. It is to try to make Marseille, or from Marseille, a place where we think the Mediterranean, so where we bring together strength and intelligence, which is done also with the university, because the President of Aix-Marseille didn't mention this, but we're one of the rare universities of excellence in Aix-Marseille. And I'm a researcher. There's a program in the Mediterranean. I have in the Institute of Advanced Research, where we welcome international artists and researchers to say that if we want to innovate in the Mediterranean, this must be done through thinking and through research. As Laurel said, men who don't think are like ghosts. And I feel that the Mediterranean policy seriously needs to be rethought as to, in my eyes, it's a little bit as if we're shipwrecked. I don't want to be too brutal here, but we can see that if we look at things, we're in a disaster in the Mediterranean. There's conflict, violence, immobilism, repression. I don't want to paint the Mediterranean black. I prefer it in blue. But nevertheless, we need to look at this reality. And it seems that we're at a dead end in the way we think of the Mediterranean, in particular with this notion that I would like to criticize, which comes back here or there, of Euro-Mediterranean. I think that it's a dead end. It's a way of looking at the Mediterranean in a vertical, top-down manner. The Mediterranean is not the periphery of Europe. It is an entire world unto itself. So we must learn to reverse the map and to look at as from itself. And I think that will change things tremendously. I think it will change also if we bring in the partners of the North. I think the big dead end of the Union for the Mediterranean was that it was run from Germany and with the Institute of Aix. So they didn't include the Germans, and they have a lot to say to us. We have to involve them in this. And finally, I think that we must make the Mediterranean into a true strategic project, not something that is just circumstantial. Of course, we have to look forwards to the future. The Chinese invented the new Silk Road. It is a project that has a horizon of 30, 50 years. Today, do you say we're lacking a vision? Yes, make the Mediterranean a route of the world, a strategic project for France, for Europe, and with the whole. We have a common destiny. We are linked together. So either we're in a citadel Europe, which folds in itself, or we're in a shared project. And this is why I was happy to come to this project of the Mediterranean region, because we need to come out of this citadel Europe. Whereas that's where we are. Look what's happening in Italy. So we have to be very careful. Therefore, the event that is being announced for June seems to be essential. The summit of the two shores, for me, is a summit of the last chance. We must not fail. So youth will transform this world. Everybody aspires to doing this. What is your vision of this Mediterranean world that can be transformed by young people? Well, when we're in the Mediterranean, I said that we needed to reverse the map. So go and look on internet the map of EGC that places Africa at the top and Europe below. When I saw that map, my perception of the Mediterranean changed entirely. So the southern and eastern shores of the Mediterranean, the young generations are there. Whereas we tend to look at this Mediterranean world in a sort of a jaw, as if between the military and the Islamists there's nothing. Whereas there's societies that are young and that are looking for their place and that have the taste for life far more than the taste for death. Of course, there are terrorist attacks and violence, but they must find their place. They must invent their future. And that is the role of the institutions and projects. So for me, the youth is the heart of a project and what I like to call creative Mediterranean, because whilst there are disasters, there is a tremendous cultural and artistic flourishing in the Mediterranean as we've never seen before. We've never seen such a driving force of world-class artists that come from the Mediterranean. And we must carry this, we must support it, we must promote it. And I think that this is what a region such as the Region South can do, and the university that made the Mediterranean one of its strategic priorities. We must coalesce the intelligence, and I think that is what will give another face to the Mediterranean of the future. So how can we prove that placing a bet on young people is not an incantation? Because we've been hearing this for a long time. Well, by implementing projects that are operational. When we create a European university with a Mediterranean vocation, we're training it. We're forming it. We're creating with the region a chair, which is Mediterranean of the future. We contribute to this. So there is one element that I would like to draw your attention to on lifestyles. In Nineveh, we created a program on lifestyles, so a Mediterranean lifestyle, which is an alternative to the American way of life, because for our planet, it's not possible to continue to live in the productivism, consumerism, etc. So there is a Mediterranean lifestyle. Look, the Mediterranean diet, because behind a lifestyle, there's a consumption model. So if we change our style of life, we will be able to invent the Mediterranean of the future. And that is done thanks to research. If we want to invent the Mediterranean future, we have to give money to the university, to research. And this is how we will be able to draw the face of the future of the Mediterranean. So the bet on young people. So you talked earlier on about the Summit of the Two Shores, which will be held in June, and this Act 2 is a forerunner. What are you hoping will be the outcome of this? Well, I hope that everything that has not happened come out of previous institutions. I was in Barcelona in 1995. I saw the Euro-Mediterranean Partnership turn into a partnership without partners. I saw the Union for the Mediterranean have tremendous difficulties. So the President of France talked about a different Mediterranean policy. Well, I'm expecting, for example, that societies and non-governmental actors have their fully fledged place, like the place of words, thoughts, artists, that we have an imagination of the Mediterranean future that comes, that pulls away from the imagination of war. Of course, there is a politico-diplomatic challenges and security, maritime, military challenges, yes. But above all, we must not forget the place of these societies and to think of what I was saying between the militaries and the Islamists. There is not nothing. There are societies that need us to hand out our hand and not forget them, because today repression is harsh and that it's time to get out of this. Otherwise, we will be in increased violence. And we saw, it's the 13th of November today, that the shockwave is not external. We are linked to this world. But I believe that we can bet on life rather than death.
Thank you, Thierry Fabre, for your very interesting word. Thank you all, members of the panel. I will now pass over to Alexandre, who will facilitate the next roundtable. Throughout all those testimonies, we feel that there is the advent of modernity, all those promises that are cropping up. But of course, we must be able to help and guide and give a vision and coherence to get back to the slogan of the Averroes meetings. We have to think the Mediterranean of the two shores. So we understood that this Mediterranean has changed. What makes a change are new technologies, disruptive innovations. So let's explore the digital Mediterranean. And therefore, once more, I'll leave you with Frédéric. Well, we're going to start this second roundtable, Youth and Innovation, an indispensable alliance to build the mission of the future. And I will ask our speakers to join us, Mr. Rabat Areski, Chief Economist for the MENA region in the World Bank. Mr. Olivier Babot, President of the Sapiens Institute, Mr. Hugo Travers, digital influencer, and who is deciphering news for the youth, Olivier Mathieu, President of the Camp, Chiara Cocciara, System Engineer for the Mars Society Program, and Mr. Bernard Faucroul, Director of the Mediterranean Youth Orchestra. Anybody missing? Mr. Faucroul, Mr. Bernard Faucroul is coming. Here he comes. Do take seats. Thank you. So, Youth and Innovation, indispensable alliance to build the Mediterranean of the future. So let's start with Mr. Rabareski, who is a chief economist for the MENA region at the World Bank. So just to specify that you here on behalf of the CMI, which is based in Marseille and which is basically animated by the World Bank. So the World Bank just published a report for the Middle East and North Africa. So what are the main teachings? Thank you. Very happy to be with you in Marseille. Well, from this report, we do mention the uncontrolled demography, 300 million people who will join the labor market in 2050. It is a youth that is better educated, better knowledgeable, more women who want to join the labor market. So new aspirations, talents, and the labor market, which is rather closed, actually, and tight, and which does not enable this youth to be integrated within a labor market, which, in fact, is plagued by the problem of instability. So the report is issuing several recommendations as to this fourth industrial revolution, this digital economy, which should be a tool for contestability and should make it possible for these the youth to gain the new market, so to reach the new market. There are strong words. You talk about in the old economic model that would have reached its limits. Early on, we talked about social contract. Social contract in the south shore of the Mediterranean was, providing public jobs, giving subsidies, and often it meant that there would be a lack of initiatives, entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth. And once more, against this, there was the will by some regimes to, youth were not allowed to talk or to take the floor. So, but basically what happened with the macroeconomics that deteriorates, it's very difficult to fuel this or to continue with this former social contract. So the new social contract is basically to replace at the heart of the economic model, to restore initiative as a driver for the economic model. This effort for investment in education, there is a potential for this, so that the south shore of the Mediterranean should be able to do this technological quantum leap and take advantage of this revolution, of this new industrial revolution. So the objectives set by the World Bank in this report are very ambitious, because we talk about creating an internet that would cover all Med countries, to develop the infrastructures necessary to do digital financial transfer through the internet and mobile phones. And I'd like you to discuss the second point. Why? Why do you want to do this? Well, in 2021, if we talk about very concrete things, in 2021, the annual Marrakesh meeting of the World Bank and IMF, in order to change this situation of status quo, well, we want to open this new economy, stop all what hinders this development. And youth seems to be spending more time on Facebook, Instagram, and not on PayPal. But what happens is that there is some people who are somewhat socially lost. They're criticizing governments on social media, but they don't have access to payment means that would make it possible for them to become entrepreneurs or to create startups. But if it cannot be paid when you provide a service, such startups will have no future. So we could have, those markets are highly fragmented and it's very difficult. So we want to be very highly ambitious, but we're also quite conscious about what is needed to create a new economy. And we'd like to start rapidly by setting ambitious objectives to 2021. And I'm happy to tell you that Paul Kagame, who is the president of the African Union, will declare before the end of his mandate the idea that the African Union will follow this Moonshot project to open basic infrastructure to develop this digital economy. So 80% of people who don't have a bank account have a mobile phone. 7% of the population has a mobile money account. So this is to add to what you've just said. So tomorrow, 2021 is tomorrow. So two questions, well, sort of a doomed question. So don't you think it's a bit of a utopia to say that there would be internet with modern internet soon? And how will you achieve this soon? Well, I think today the ability for these countries to achieve this objective, it means to say we have to change the regulation. That is short. Well, it can be done in the times planned. And I think today we are dealing with collusion, tacit collusions in telecoms, in the banking domain. But the idea of deadlines of 2021 is to change this status quo and to open up upstream all the upstream sectors which block the evolution of a more integrated, more open economy and more challengeable economy. Thank you. We leave the floor to Olivier Babot, president of the Sapiens Institute. So often we talk about think tank, but you are a think tank. So you first tell us what it is. You are the print of this institute. You mobilize about the, based on the challenges and of the 21st century. And for you, it is not obvious, yes. So why do we think of think tank? We probably the think tank because we patented the word the happy text, fintech, and the word not think tech, but the era of data. This is what we think, must be more than ever the era of ideas, because data without ideas, without values, without principles could lead us to the worst dictatorship which are being cropping up here and there. So this is a key element. And of course, it's a reflection element. It is a place where expertise will merge and work together to produce ideas which will influence public decision. We don't do politics. We have a stronger ambition. We want to do the politics, that is, to influence what politicians will do afterwards. Early on, with Erika Battista and the other speakers, it was said that for the first time, youth drive the economy because they have the economy and they're most innovative. So how can we pull out of this model, which is now, it used to. It used to take a while, before 20 years ago, to create a business. Now it's much faster. Well, for the last 40 years, there is a kind of revenge of youth. Often it's said we said a term with virtual reality is predominant. Well, virtual is not against real. For Aristotle, virtual is what is the potential. It is about to become. That should be perfected, and virtual is exactly what youth is all about. It is what should become Acte 2, having been Power 2. So this power of youth is what we see today. So what are the most visible people today? They're young entrepreneurs, young industrial entrepreneurs, like Zuckerberg or Sergey Brin, possibly Elon Musk and others. But anyway, well, he looks juvenile, but he used to be juvenile anyway. So in politics, we realize often that there is an opposed correlation or between the age of the leaders and the democratic dimension of the system. We could say this, So we see today that there is some kind of people are getting younger. Hannah Arendt, who said that in the crisis of education, any new generation of youth is very much like barbarians who attack civilization, and you need to civilize them. But we have a feeling today, and we're part of the old world. Even we're from the world of before, and like you in the first two rows, you're the world of tomorrow. This world of before, well, it evolves so fast that sometimes we are foreigners in our own time, and or aliens. So, for example, the reverse mentoring, that young people will explain to older people how the world functions. We are in a reversed system which was born in the 20th century. Innovation, when it was coined in the 20th century, 19th century, it was a rude word. The new was bad. Since the 19th century, we are in a world where only what is good is as a value. So only new is good and is interesting. So it is, it is a new. Okay, well. There are negative aspects to all this, so relation to screens, addictive elements. How can we turn this into opportunities? Yeah. Platon says we got the three parts in a human being, three parts of the thinking, ability to act, and sensitive desire. Well, those three parts today are fundamentally weakened by the technologies today. An adult would scroll will scroll about 90 meters of social network per day, and so we all look at our mobile phone at least 200 times a day. In the US, they show that more than half the people said that the first act and last act is to look at my mobile phone. And Facebook said that my major opponent is sleep. Number 2 of our card, is started for 15 hours, is stopped for 5 minutes. It's called binge viewing, so you all know this. We live in a society which is screen addictive, encouraged by a whole set of notification reminder to draw our attention. So therefore, it is difficult for us to think. We are dotted or zapped thinking, highly superficial. We are moving out of the writing area. In 2020, we consider that more than half of queries on the internet will be done orally. Last question, you did mention when you said 3 luxuries that all human beings want: time, space, roots. And for you, the Mediterranean has everything to have this. Yes. Well, first, one last antique reference. Okay, well, Marcus Aurelius said, if I didn't learn something today, I've lost my day, So this is what I wish you all today. Aristotle made the difference between praxis and poiesis. Poiesis is the action which has a purpose outside of itself, the production of something, where you could say, more and more people want praxis. That is, they want to have the sense of praxis, that the action which is worth for itself, the pleasure you have, such as when you play music, is something for you, and not for what it brings you. And I think that the three luxuries in the 21st century, quite exciting but scaring as well. 3 luxuries would be time, space, and the roots. Time, because we realize that time for us, time for the others, time that has value, versus time of, time you spend for, you spend scrolling. Time of quality, this is something we need. And second is space. We realize that in cities where 1 square meter is worth a lifetime of saving of someone who is at the minimum wage, so space is becoming precious. But we have that space we have in France, in many countries. And the roots, that is the ability to be from somewhere. It's not anywhere, but a place which has a meaning for us, and which links us to the common fate of people who live there. And Mediterranean countries have all those wealth. It is for us now to know how to exploit them. Thank you, Mr. Babot.
Alors, vous savez, on ne capte pas le réseau ici dans cette salle. C'est une des particularités de cette séance de théâtre.
Okay.
Par contre, j'espère que
okay, I do hope that there is Wi-Fi in this room, by the way, but even if the phone doesn't work.
Hugo Travers, maintenant, qui est influenceur digital, qui lui, pour le coup, est un vrai jeune, on est bien d'accord, décrypteur de l'actualité.
So you decipher news for the youth. You're 21, you're at Sciences Po Paris, and for 3 years now you have an internet chain, you go decipher. So what is the purpose of that chain? Thank you for this invitation. It is a YouTube channel I started 3 years ago when I was 18, and I just started my studies. I'm interested by politics and news, and at the same time as I was aware of the fact that at 18 not everybody is fascinated by this, so we could have other centers of interest, but I could see my sister. She was 15 when I was 18, and she spent a lot of time on YouTube like me, but she didn't spend time being informed. So I thought about a YouTube channel who would talk about news for the young ones and explain the main topics, but it's, when we talk about young people, there is not one news, so we can define the news as such. But anyway, the first objective was to talk to high school students or, first-year university student. So, high schools, secondary school, but they are not necessarily interested by news. student who is a Sciences Po with me doesn't need me to be informed. That's not my target. So anyway, the content I've developed, while developing my content, I tried to act as a journalist, but in parallel, I would have formats that are known and already present on YouTube. I won't detail this because it's not important, but the idea was to say, okay, let's see what works on YouTube in terms of format and codes, and let's take this and adapt them to add information content. And the channel started that way, YouTube initially. It continued, and we had about 15,000 subscribers in 1 year, then 150,000 the second year. Today it's 250,000, and they are mainly contents on many social networks, YouTube, Instagram, and other platforms. You can see yourself. So how do you capture this audience? Okay, it's all very nice to say that I do a channel for the young ones, but how do you capture them? Because often, as a father, as a journalist, they don't pay attention to news. I mean, how do you get them? As I said, I know it is a difficult to grab the audience, for young audience for that. So we did a lot of work on the format. I'll come back to this. The very fact that we combine the formats already known on YouTube helps addressing these issues. A lot of work on collaboration with other YouTubers, and we could work on common videos which make it possible to we do a video together, do it with another YouTuber, and we can help them discover. And then I tried to find a correct balance between the topic I consider as important and I want to put forward, political topics, and in parallel subjects which are lighter, but for which there could be an interesting approach. That typically a rap singer died at the beginning of the year, in May. And the death of this rap singer that fueled a lot of discussion on social networks was such that a lot of rumors were circulating. People said that he was not dead. Fake news was circulating. So I thought that was an interesting subject, not the topic as such, but to try to understand how those fake news were created and circulated. So, and I wanted to explain that to a lot of young people. And for the growing audience, it's very difficult to analyze. There are young people who are 13, 14, who could have 1 million subscribers at their age. It's very difficult to analyze, but a lot of knowledge of this format, which is important. I don't have any content on Facebook. I have something on Messenger. Every day you can get a summary of the news, but this is the only thing I do. Well, people are more on Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, and other applications. So possibly you, of course. Now, today, what is the role of the social networks, of these soft communication channels, And we are in other networks, for example, but I think that did we miss the evolution with the older ones, or did we miss a step? I mean, today, what are the social networks where we can communicate and innovate? Well, the evolution is very fast, as you know, and even, I was mentioning a recent application that I don't even know how to use, but possibly in a few years there will be, every year there is a new platform that crops up. TipTap is 500 million users, is the most downloaded application in the world today. And the rate, the pace is such that new platforms are being developed every year with this new generation. And it is very difficult for enterprises and elected officials, for a lot of people, to follow this pace. I don't have much to say except that we should be more reactive and trust the utilizations made by the youth and understand how they use those means. But clearly, for an institution enterprise which is more traditional and want to talk to the young ones, to the youth. There is such a gap that there are precise examples on in domains such as humanitarian support. Today, there are influencers. I don't like this word, but there are young people who have major followers, and they can mobilize for some causes, in addition to have more than NGOs, which did not do the transition on social networks, but not in such a large way. There is the example of Jérôme Jarre, who was able to get $3 million for Rohingyas in Bangladesh. And these are examples of mobilization made by the youth. And this is why more traditional players maybe should watch this to understand the mechanisms and the usages. That's what we're here for. We've just listened to you. Thank you very much for this testimony and your comments, which were fascinating. We move on to someone who knows those issues, Olivier Mathieu, president of the camp. You are co-founder of the Price Minister. You were president of this company. And since April 2018, you are president of the camp in Aix-en-Provence. In a couple of words, what is this camp for those who are not from the region? The camp is a project I decided to dedicate a large part of my time, and it's kind of the campus for the quest of meaning. And we want to associate meaning and innovation. And basically, having created a business, having developed it, and having sold a group called Rakuten, I have invested in startups, and president of France Digital. So I do work with startups, and I can see all the ways to create value in the economic sense of the word, especially in the Silicon Valley or diverse locations. We talk about Israel as a startup nation in the Nordics, and in the UK. France is becoming a startup nation slowly, because the current, our president is trying to do this, but we realize there is a second trend next to the innovation, which is that of meaning, the need for impact, positive impact, and therefore we want, together with the camp, reconcile the two main trends, which are to be able to innovate, that we've always done in industrial revolutions, but still asking the question of the long term and the meaning.
So in the camp is a place, a campus. We're not going to do too much Latin because the Latin but it's a plane. And the idea is to have a place, a physical place, where people can come. And from this place, we try to develop three particular know-hows. The first is doing. So we want. I think we were talking about think tank. No, it's a patented word. Be careful. No. It's a play on words with regard to think tank. What we were trying to do is to be a do tank. So we think that the way of approaching the big questions of our world, and in particular the Sustainable Development Goals developed by the United Nations, is also by doing, by bringing people around the table. And not just by thinking, there has to be a vision. Think tanks are there for that, but we also need to bring projects out of the ground, and that's what we call undertaking. It's being entrepreneurs, doing. And the other thing that's important is to fight against short-term dictatorship. So we want to make the camp a place where people can come together. It's a third place. It's a place where we come out of our office. A third place is neither your office nor your house. It's a third place, a neutral place. And we come and look for inspiration, step out of the box and think in the long term. And that's where we come to the question of youth. We might wonder whether our children's children might want to have children if we continue to head in the direction where we're heading now. It's a real question because the economic models of today, the companies that we work in, are optimized to earn money on the short term. When you're on the stock exchange, you talk about quarters, the end of the year, and even when there's an electoral deadline. You look at the end of your mandate, and it's difficult to think on the more long term, so for following generations. So we're going to be doing long term and above all collective. We have the feeling that the problems that we are thinking today, problems that go beyond ASCOP, and that no single company, no single government, no single city, no single region, a big region like the region Sud, can not solve all of the problems. So the idea is what brings us together is bigger than what separates us. So basically, if we come back to rugby or collective sports or football, union means strength. On this camp, there are a lot of young people, and you take them from all age categories, and that's what's interesting. Can you explain what you do? Yes. If we decide and we have a vision that the camp is the campus of the future, it's the campus where we want to build a desirable future. We don't want to be resigned. We look ahead to the future with and for young people. It's very important. We're not there to imagine the world for young people. And instead of the young people, it's with young people, because we see that there is a new generation coming into the job market that is not a lost generation, as was the case between the two wars, but to the contrary, it's a paradoxical generation that you can maybe see in the studies and statistics. We can see on the job market. They're young people who don't really believe in the world of companies or the bullshit. They don't believe in the bullshit. Those are keywords the keywords you put in the entrance to a company: ethics, courage. And the problem is we need to do what we say and say what we do. And they know that they won't be able to stay in a company their whole lives as their parents did. So this reflection on loyalty in companies, loyalty in society, young people have kind of fallen out of love with it, and so they're maybe idealistic, and they create their startup, which is wonderful, but they can also become freelancers, independents, they can work in NGOs, they have lots of possibilities other than the traditional world of companies. And what we think is that besides this form of individual that reacts to the current world, they're also looking for meaning, far more than our parents were. They're aware, no doubt, of the walls that were heading for headlong, and there's no doubt the question of climate, of immigration, migratory flows, technological revolutions, social inequality, urbanization, one of the main scandals today that we don't talk about sufficiently, but it forces us to raise the question: is a concentration, human concentration in very small territories. In the first roundtable, you're talking about the cost per square meters in these areas. So more than one Earth dweller out of two, 50%, more than 50% of humans that live on Earth are concentrated on less than 5% of the surface area of the world. So we're ultra concentrated. So this question raises the question: what is a smart city, the city of the future? How will we educate the people? How will we feed them? How will they be transported? How will they communicate? These are questions that we wish to address to young people and for young people. And we set up the systems. And end of September, we launched this initiative in the region, which is to be proud. It's the Camp Foundation. So this is a fund that is dedicated to the construction of the future for and by young people with very concrete initiatives. And we organize, for example, bivouac camps. We would call that summer camps in the United States. And we give these young people who in middle school to access to the ultra-modern infrastructure of the camp, to learn to pilot a drone, command a robot, not only technological competences, but also how to speak in public, how to work in groups, lots of things that maybe are not sufficiently taught in traditional schools, so that they can build their self-confidence and be the actors of the change of the future, and not just say, as young people, that's the problem of adults, they're handing us down a world in ruins, but we say, no, build the world with us, and we give you means, and we do mentoring, sometimes reverse mentoring, because young people can also help their elders. So there are also initiatives within primary schools. We have brought along a lot of school teachers and dozens of pupils at primary school, so that they can write a digital book to imagine the world in 30 years' time. It's a book called 2048, and which was read in public by professional actors. And what's interesting is, first ideas, we make them write, we make them work together, we make them imagine. And then we're saying that innovation is not just technology in the sense of university sciences. It's that too. And we have work a lot with Aix-Marseille University, but it's also the power of imagination. So we find in science fiction, which is strongly developed in children who can imagine different solutions from those that adults imagine. So it's called Recreation Lab, and the children are led not only to be trained, but also to make their own proposals. And you have this famous formula. The camp goes from CM1 to CEOs, and that's a French, but it means from primary school to company directors. And so we have Sustainable Development Goals, and they address all generations. So the main point is it just for old people, just for young people? But the question is, how do we reconcile all of the generations? How do we bring them all back around the table together? Because one of the consequences of all the crises we've described in recent years is the generational fracture, which is becoming somewhat worrying. And there's a very high unemployment rate in young people under 25 years. One young person out of every four under the age of 25 are unemployed. And so this is a real problem. It shows a strong inequality in certain populations. There are more than 50% of unemployment among young people, and others are not unemployed at all. And then at the other end of the demographic change, we have a high unemployment rate in the over 50s who find it difficult to find a job due to the technological revolution. So we need places such as the camp, and I'm going to go to Morocco and Tunisia to see if we can develop other places of this type in order to create a Mediterranean union of the third places of innovation and positive impact. So just to conclude, you were talking about the projects that you developed, in particular residences. Can you just tell us? Yes, in the camp, we welcome all populations from primary school to company directors, but our main model is to get people working together. That means private-public, region, Sud, Metropole, Aix-Marseille Metropolis, Chamber of Commerce. They're important partners to the camp. And we also have a certain number of large private groups, Accenture, Accor, Airbus, Sodexo, Post, who have decided to pool their means, their people, their staff, their engineers, their executives, but also their budgets to work together on training. So we transform the world by, we host boards, human resources. We bring them together around the table, and they have the humility of thinking that they won't find the solutions alone. That's an important process because mentally we're putting out of the traditional market where we're all in competition with each other. And so that we don't want to preserve our professional secrets, but we will ask questions that go beyond us. So we'll pool all of our means. So we have 17 big private groups for public organizations. There are 21 around the table today, and there are lots of customers who come there. And we get them to meet young people through the initiatives of bringing people together to work, a private, public, startups, young people in residence that you talked about. In English, we call it Hive. And we select 20 young people every 6 months who, and a bit like the Villa Medicis in Rome, they're young creators who come from very different backgrounds, and we will soon be receiving the second promotion or third. And it's a third. The second is finishing, and the third is coming in. There are 20 young people coming from 13 different countries, and they have a talent. And for 6 months, they will be housed, accommodated, fed, and they will be able to develop their own projects. Everything that underlies this question of the youth, as we said earlier on, it's a word that's very difficult to translate from English into French, but we're talking about empowerment. Are we giving trust, power, and autonomy to young people? That's what we think it's necessary to do. And I will close with a quote that you no doubt are familiar with. We didn't tell them it was impossible, so they did it. It's the favorite phrase of entrepreneurs in the Silicon Valley. And it's Mark Twain, an American novelist, who wrote this. He wrote Tom Sawyer, for example. But it works so well today in our period. It's to say when you're not young, you don't yet know that it's impossible. That's how you move mountains. And we really believe in that. That explains the success of Silicon Valley. And I think that in a meeting of antique civilizations, pre-Socratic Egyptian and Mediterranean civilizations, we have the capacity, or even the duty, maybe, of regaining this field of innovation and to create a new form of a hub of the Silicon Valley, which thinks innovation with a positive impact. Thank you very much, Mr. Olivier Mathieu.
Nous allons passer à Chiara Cocca, là. Vous êtes donc ingénieur d'exploitation.
We're going to move on to Chiara, where you're a system exploitation engineer for Mars Society. So at 28 years of age, you already conquered Mars, but you are the perfect example of the young Mediterranean who innovates, and the theme of this roundtable is made for you. Can you talk to us about how you reach the second stage that we will mention later on?
You will speak in English?
Yes, that will be.
Okay, fine.
Yes, when I think about innovation, to me this word already has the meaning of something that is changing, that has to adapt to the way that it changes. So the way that we do innovation changing itself. I come from Sicily, which is an island in the Mediterranean Sea, and we know that a very long time ago this island has a strategic position. And it was very important between Greece and Spain and the north of Africa. Then things started to change, and they moved in the north of Italy. Industry started to develop, and in the north of Europe. And then what I see between the people of my age is somehow the feeling of being abandoned. So when I talk to my people, to my friends in Sicily, they feel there is no job, there is no future. And this leads me to a question. Is technology or innovation an instrument of industries, or it's an instrument of each of us? And this is what I tell my friends. You don't need to wait that people call you. You don't need to go to the north of Italy. You don't need to go somewhere else. You are yourself an instrument of innovation. You can do it yourself. And that's what I started to do with my life. So I started with nothing. We have no job. We have a very low productivity. But I started to think what I can do. What can I do with my life and for society? And that's where I started to build what are my dreams and what I can do for myself and for the future.
Alors, vous êtes titulaire de 3 master degrees en...
So you hold 3 master degrees in aerospatial industry, and you helped to build a drone. Can you say a couple of words to... I would like to specify to the audience that Mrs. Chiara speaks French very well, but she just prefers to speak in English. Just so that people understand that you understand my questions very well. Yes, I could speak French, but it's easier for me to speak in English.
So what the question?
The question was about the drone you created. The drone.
Yes, so this is what I thought about innovation. I think each of us is an instrument, but how can we use your instrument? So there are people that want to innovate, they want to emerge, they want to make something for themselves. And my idea is how you can use yourself for the society. And coming from Sicily, we have this big problem of immigration. And not only of immigrants arriving, but the biggest problem is that they come by boats, and most of the times they have accidents, and they die.
Authentique.
And what happened is that I see at the newspaper or the television news that people die and there are dead bodies arriving in the lands. But once it came to my city, so we woke up one day and there were dead bodies of immigrants that arrived in our sands. And then what we read in the news is that in the middle of the night it was quite impossible to look for the bodies because we didn't have instruments. And then I thought, what can I do to help? And that's where I came up with the idea of a drone with a localization system, a GPS, and an infrared system that will make sure to individuate where are the people, the bodies. And with an algorithm that I developed, I created a system that made me understand if the body was still alive, was already dead, what was the condition of the body itself. And this is very important because if we have to look in the sea for bodies, this can take forever. We can save no people in this way. The way that I thought is that with this drone it's quicker, and we try to identify where are the people that are alive, and we concentrate in this way, we go to save them directly.
Alors, en 2016, vous êtes consacré...
So in 2016, a magazine Forbes consecrated you on the list of entrepreneurs, leader of the future under the age of 30 years. 1 year beforehand, you'd already won the first prize of innovators of less than 35 years in Italy, given by the MIT. So it's not by chance. Now we're going to talk about your fabulous experience. I was speaking of Mars earlier on, and you were part in 2015 of the Mars Society mission led by the NASA that simulated the life on that planet. You were the only European, the only Mediterranean also to be present, and you are no doubt the only specimen of young among the young that have lived for 1 week without internet.
Amazing experience of my life.
I understand.
I had a dream when I was a kid, and I think that's the dream that most of us have, that you want to be an astronaut. But then sometimes people forget about their dreams. And what stayed with me was that I wanted to be one. And then I participated to this program. I was selected first by NASA to participate for the 1-year mission. And then I decided to go for the 2 weeks mission. And the way that we did is that we simulated life on Mars. So what happened right now is that when we look at the red planet, industries are going in 2 parallel positions. One is how we go to Mars, and the second one is once we reach the planet, how do we live there? And I participated to the second part of experiments. So we lived for 2 weeks inside a dome, and we couldn't go out, for example, without a spacesuit. We breathed with oxygen from the spacesuit itself. We had helmets. And we had a very, very tight schedule. We did a technological, but as well a psychological test. I remember we had a very, very interesting topic. We were completely isolated, so we had no contact with the exterior. We had no internet. We couldn't communicate with our families. And in particular, I was there during Christmas time, which is a very, very particular time. And I was missing my family. And then in that moment, we had on the schedule to answer some very, very strange questions, like if you need to die on Mars, how would you die? Or if you die, how would you like this news to be delivered to your family? And when we think of it now, it's like, okay, I can answer this question, I can have fun with it. But when you're alone and you don't talk to your family for 2 weeks, you somehow feel like you are dying on Mars. So you start thinking, okay, what I would like to do? How would I like this to be delivered to my family? And this is very interesting because when we think about long-term missions, we think about technological aspects. So we were engineers, doctors, but above all, how we humans would react to specific situations like isolation. And above all, how you deal with making a team with people that you actually don't know. So I didn't know the people that I was trapped in this dome for 2 weeks, and I had to make friends. So I have to live with them. I have to make sure that my way of living was good with the way of living of them. So we have to stay together. And this is what they think for long-term mission, like staying months or years on Mars.
Alors vous avez oublié une question essentielle. Vous n'avez peut-être pas envie d'en parler, mais moi je vais en parler. C'était la deuxième.
You had another experience, and that was the second, is how to make a pizza on Mars. That's not a joke.
We are doing a lot of studies. We can actually go to Mars. We can live there. There are very, very strange ideas, like how we can change the planet in itself. So there is the idea, for example, of warming up the planet. So the water that is under the ground can melt, and they can start to develop plants and then microorganisms. And then this can itself increase the temperature with the plants especially, and then the humans can start to live there. So in the long-term plan, we expect to live without helmets or oxygen, but we can live directly. It's a dream, I don't know, but we plan on that.
But you can live without pizza.
We made a pizza on Mars.
What's what I want to add?
So we had dry ingredients. It's didn't come up with the very best pizza, I have to say, but made me feel home during Christmas.
Okay, c'était juste pour l'anecdote et pour le fun. Donc.
That was just an anecdote for fun. So today you work in Germany, in Darmstadt, in Blumenstadt. It's a European organization in charge of exploitation of meteorological satellites. And you are continuing to prepare the future missions to Mars, which were for 2022.
I work with preparing future missions that are dedicated to Earth observation. So we are studying actually how the Earth is changing, or whenever there is a problem, how to intervene. But my way of innovation is done in two ways. One is at my work, and the other one is on my side. And I will keep doing my projects, and above all, my mission nowadays is to inspire the new generation to believe in themselves and to think that you don't need a boss to tell you what to do, but you can do it yourself, because you yourself are the innovation.
Merci beaucoup, Kira. Thank you.
Bernard Foucroul, director of the Youth Orchestra of the Mediterranean. You are a Belgian member of parliament, and you organize the orchestra of the Mediterranean in Aix-en-Provence. How do you manage the relationship and exchange between North and South as an artist, and between the South and the South? Maybe to answer your question, I can set off from this very beautiful call from Ara Benjamin earlier on, when he said to young people, be creators, be innovative, push back ignorance, and implicitly push back ignorance from each other. For me, that is essential. And I think that your question on the question of North-South exchanges is within this context that it is really valuable. I mean, it's not a question that is for artists and cultural players, but it's a far more global question that looks at all of our societies and all of the young people who today live and will grow in the future. So to answer your question, these exchanges between the North and the South, I find generally highly with a great deficit. There is not sufficient cultural and artistic exchange, although some things are developing, and I'm happy to hear of some new projects today. But it's not just a North-South project problem. It's also a South-South problem. I think that it would be very interesting to develop more relationships between countries of the South Shore, the Eastern Shore of the Mediterranean. And above all, if it's a problem between the North and the North. I'm thinking, for example, of the president of Albania. We do not have sufficient, although things are developing today, we do not have sufficient contact with the artistic world, intellectual world, and civil society in the different Balkan countries. So a big deficit, I believe. And a question that we must carry with regard to our institutions. I came to the direction of the X Festival 12 years ago, and I saw that during the 60 years of its existence, the festival had ceased to develop towards the north and had never given a thought to the south of Europe, of North Africa, and of the Middle East. We tried to correct things, and this is a historical deficit. And I think we need to work with this intensively. And from that point of view, I think that networks, any form of network, for me, it's really the 21st century weapon. It's a Pacific weapon that allows us to exchange our experience and know-how, to know what works well, what are the failures that we've experienced and encountered. And within the networks, we can progress together. But these networks must cover the entire Mediterranean basin. But despite this finding, you said that there are initiatives that do not come from official and academic institutions, meaning it's developed parallel to this. Yes. I believe that there are 3 criteria to try to identify an institution or a cultural player that is dynamic. The first is to be able to establish a living relationship between heritage and creation, or to be in a situation of creation. The heritage, our heritage, common or individual, needs to be brought back to life, and that is essential. The second thing is that we need to develop civic participations. We cannot just bring art and culture alive only in the favoured, privileged part of society. We need to go out to touch all of society, all ages, including remote audiences. And the third, but which may stem from the first two, is the capacity to embrace the world, meaning through our art, be it cinema, literature, music or dance, or theatre, that we must be able to tell the world, to be a reflection of it, and to make it into a weapon of transformation. If these three criteria are brought together, and of course we can find artists and institutions in all of our Mediterranean countries who bring these together. They are not necessarily the most prestigious places, the most academic places, which are the best positioned on this map. How do we identify these? How do we put the spotlight them on if they're not already acknowledged by the institutions and by academics? Well, speaking of networks, I think the networks, we created a Mediterranean network in Aix called Medinia, which brings together some 20 or so partners within a whole set of Mediterranean countries. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that our official bodies, the French Institute, etc., are there to help us to identify not only what is already in the limelight, but also what is on the fringes. And today, in Europe, in North Africa, or in the Middle East, very often the most enthusiastic and innovative people are not those that we talk of the most. We must therefore be able to go and get these people and put the spotlight on them. So you working for increased support for mobility of artists and productions, but what do you suggest to achieve this mobility? Well, firstly, on the question of mobility, I would like us to be aware that there is a scandalous inequality. We, as Europeans, have practically no trouble going to most Mediterranean countries. The contrary is not true. And even for artists, professional artists, it is sometimes extremely difficult to obtain visas that allow them to travel, that allow them to come and to talk between countries in the south and the north. So from that point of view, there is a lot of work to be done, which also involves awareness raising by the foreign affairs, consulates, etc. And our experience of working in particular with the young musicians of the Orchestra of the Mediterranean is sometimes you have to overcome a certain number of unfavorable prejudices in order to bring these young people to our country. So there are a whole series of obstacles. I found also what the president of Albania said earlier on, the importance of the to and fro. Too frequently, the European world has brought wonderful beings and has kept them. Whereas in all of our countries, we need to keep our brains, our creators, and we must make sure that there is a constant dialogue. And from that point of view, reducing mobility is the very worst service we can offer. It is by consolidating and facilitating forms of mobility that we can overcome the fears and allow people to go back home so they can continue to work. And there's a fourth point that I think is important. There are countries, in particular Germany, that have set up funds that are managed with Mediterranean countries. They're co-managed. And I think that that's a real question today, to set up funds, Franco-Mediterranean funds or European neo-Mediterranean funds, which are managed in common and not only from the north. Because if we do it from the north, we will very quickly find ourselves in a very paternalist approach. We will bring you. I think today we must necessarily break with this inheritance of the colonization and attempt by all possible means to re-establish a basis of equality and dialogue. And from that point of view, the very best way of achieving it is to do it with and by giving a participation to our partners, as we said earlier on.
Now, by way of conclusion, innovation is hard as well, and with the Youth Mediterranean Orchestra, you do better cultural exchange. It could be one of the solutions to. Well, it's a drop in the Mediterranean Sea. This orchestra, but it's a beautiful drop of water. You know, this orchestra was founded 30 years ago, and today still it gathers some of the best young musicians from all Mediterranean countries. Today, only Libya, which for obvious reasons is not in the orchestra, but every year we tour, we do hearings, we guest the best musicians, starting from Morocco, finishing in Portugal. So the Mediterranean is really taken in its broadest meaning. And for the musicians, the fact that they will play major European works with a major conductor. Well, for most of them, it is unique because in their countries, they will never play that anyway. So what we want to develop as well in the last few years is also to invite some of those best musicians who are also, sometimes they do improvisation, they have their own specific traditions, and to enter logics of shared creation, of co-creation, or intercultural creation. And this brings us back to the question of heritage. Around the Med Basin, there is such a wealth of musical, poetic tradition, which is amazing. And, you know, we should not leave it in museums, you know. Let's use it for creation and joint creation. And young artists today who come from all over all those countries end up in a joint creation. Well, it is both fascinating, and I believe there is nothing more beautiful today than this co-creation, but it is also a beautiful image of what the Mediterranean could become in the future. Thank you so much, Mr. Fokroul.
Merci à vous tous, merci à la salle, merci aussi à la technique et aux interprètes.
Thank you for the technical translators, and I give the floor to Alexandre Kouchner, who will talk about the program for the rest of Act 2.
Merci beaucoup, merci madame, merci messieurs. De Platon à la pizza.
So, from Plato to pizza on Mars. Okay, well, we got a great vision of the Mediterranean of the future. Well, let's move to another domain, but, you know, gastronomy. So, it's about time for you and for us to meet and continue our discussions around lunch. But just before that, we'll have the official photo. So I will ask all the guests, official guests, to join us just in front of the Villa Méditerranée, and at 4:30 you will be able to take part in your workshops. Thank you. Have a good lunch. See you later.